Chapter 1534, Unkillable. The seven-colored heaven-devouring beast was no longer fist-sized. It had become a 10-meter-long soaring ant. It flickered with red, orange, and yellow lights and was fighting a receival expert from the world of forsaken saints. The sounds of their battle constantly rang out and was extraordinarily intense. The receival expert who was fighting the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast became more and more shocked. He had lived for several tens of thousand years and had basically seen most of the magical beasts out there. Even if he had not seen them all, he had at least read about them in the ancient records in the sacred spirit hall. However, he had never seen or heard of such a vicious beast. It was actually able to fight him to a standstill, a mid-receival expert, as a saint emperor who had not even reached the peak. Even the ancient records of the sacred spirit hall possessed no information about a magical beast with such battle prowess. What surprised him the most was that he had already poured all his strength into fighting the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast, yet he felt like his opponent was still not using its full strength. As they fought, the intelligent eyes of the divine beast would glance at the nearby woman. Deafening booms violently materialized in outer space. The intensity of the battles in outer space had far exceeded those on the Tianyuan continent. Outer space was darkness. Only specks of starlight gave the battlefield some natural color. Azure and violet lights glowed extremely bright, filling the space around them with light. They constantly clashed with a dark light. The huge figures of maces were constantly conjured. They smashed through space and erupted with devastating might. They crushed and collapsed the space where they landed, creating terrifying cracks that were several thousand meters long and causing the space around them to constantly tremble. Jianchen, Xiongzhong, Shaoling, and Gongxi Ming fought in outer space. Their battles were extremely intense. They had obliterated the space around them and caused it to descend into pure darkness. Jianchen and Xiongzhong's battle was particularly ferocious, having reached a white-hot intensity. A huge, white tiger appeared in outer space. It radiated with a tremendous pressure, as if the god of beasts had descended. It directly shot toward Gongxi Ming with a condescending pressure. The white tiger was ethereal, completely condensed from energy but seemed rather illusory. It was a direct result of Xiao Ling's 9 godly arts. Gongxi Ming was stern as he stood opposite of her. He felt a threat from the white tiger. It was far powerful than the threat he felt from Shaoling. He did not reveal any complacency at all. He used his 10-meter-long spear to stab the white tiger. His spear was unbelievably fast. As it moved, the space near the tip of the spear immediately shattered like a mirror. Terrifying energy permeated the surroundings, causing the spear to become even more powerful. It shot toward the white tiger's head with an icy-cold killing intent. Gongxi Ming seemed ancient. His face was coated in wrinkles. He seemed like he was about to pass away, but his strength was slightly greater than Qing Jingyun. He had reached the peak of mid-returnance, close to breaking through to late returnance. 9 godly arts, world lock. At this moment, Shaoling formed a hand seal with both hands and yelled a name. The space around Gongxi Ming froze at that moment, immobilizing him. Even his strike, filled with the terrifying power, calmed to a halt, having been frozen as well. Although Worldlock seemed similar to the space frozen by sainthood experts, the power between the two could not be compared. Worldlock was one of the 9 great secret techniques of the 9 godly arts, having been personally passed down by Mo Tianyun. Any one of the 9 secret techniques was greater than a saint-tier battle skill. They still possessed unfathomable power when used by Shaoling, who had reached returnance. They were unlike saint-tier battle skills, which were completely useless to Origin Realm experts. The moment Gongxi Ming was frozen, the huge white tiger arrived before him and roared. It raised one of its claws, swiping it toward Gongxi Ming like a mountain that had fallen from the sky. The claw possessed a mysterious power, and wherever the claw moved, seemed to compress, becoming extremely tough. Directly beneath it, Gongxi Ming experienced the effects of the claw the most. He felt like the claw above him had become a mountain, falling down on him with a tremendous might. Not only did his body become extremely heavy, the energy within him slowed down as the claw smashed down. This heavy, slow feeling intensified as the claw neared him, making Gongxi Ming suspect whether the energy within him was under his control or not. It felt like it would be sealed away if the claw reached him. What a powerful ability. First she traps me so I can't move, and then she uses the white tiger to suppress my abilities. It's just fortunate that the person using these abilities isn't as powerful as me, or I really would suffer today. Gongxi Ming's cloudy, old eyes suddenly light up, shining like two lanterns. Suddenly, the deep sound of thunder came from his body. He was suddenly covered in countless sparks, which constantly crackled. The light they produced made him shine like a sun, dyeing all the surroundings white. The power that had trapped Gongxi Ming suddenly collapsed because of the electricity. Coated in a powerful layer of electricity, Gongxi Ming maneuvered his spear and stabbed it at the tiger's claw. It erupted with a boom. At the same time, Jian Chen's azulate swords erupted with his utmost strength. He stabbed through Xiongzhong's chest, where the tip of the Ziying sword poked through his back. Only the sword hilt was visible from the front. However, Jian Chen became heavily injured as well. His left shoulder had been struck by Xiongzhong's mace, which not only reduced his entire shoulder to a cloud of blood but also shattered the left half of his body. His body became a bloody mess. Jian Chen and Xiongzhong possessed roughly the same level of strength. Coupled with the fact that the two of them were fighting as hard as they could in an attempt to kill each other in the shortest amount of time possible, the two of them were severely injured. They both became even more injured, Xiongzhong in particular. The power of laws from the way of the sword wreaked havoc within him, causing severe injuries. It even harmed the essence of his life, causing him to show some weakness on his face. Jian Chen constantly vomited blood. His face had become sheet white. However, his eyes still glowed bright, showing no weakness at all. He controlled the Ziying sword with his soul and attempted to stab Xiongzhong's forehead to end the battle. Is this Jian Chen unkillable? His true strength is clearly weaker than mine, but he's still so lively even after taking so many heavy attacks. Xiongzhong swore inside. Even he had to admit that his endurance was not as great as Jian Chen's endurance despite being a late returnance expert. Jian Chen had become unkillable in Xiongzhong's eyes because his regenerative abilities were just far too powerful. At the same time, he seemed to possess an endless energy that never ran dry. Xiongzhong could not afford to test how much longer Jian Chen could keep it up. Chapter 1535, Hopelessness. If this continues, I will definitely lose. A gleam of light flickered through Xiongzhong's eyes. He had to admit that he had underestimated Jian Chen. In terms of strength, he was definitely stronger than Jian Chen but not by much. He could not to utterly dominate Jian Chen, and Jian Chen's recovery abilities were just far too powerful. Under the dual healing from his abilities as a Class 9 Radiant Saint Master and his chaotic body, Jian Chen could recover in an extremely short amount of time no matter how fatal his injuries were. He was even able to regrow whole limbs. On the other hand, Xiongzhong did not possess these abilities and his wounds from the power of laws would not close up either. The more heavily injured he became, the more power he needed to devote to suppressing the power of laws. It severely limited the amount of strength he could use. Jian Chen basically healed as he fought against Xiongzhong, so Xiongzhong would obviously begin to suffer more. Xiongzhong tilted his head in an attempt to dodge the Qing Sua sword, which had targeted his forehead. At the same time, the thought of retreat crossed his head. If he continued fighting like this, it was extremely likely that he would die here. However, at this moment, a gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. He used all the power his soul could offer, using the martial soul force that would only appear in people who were both Radiant Saint Masters and fighters. Immediately, a tremendous pressure permeated the surroundings. It did not target anyone's body or influence their soul. Xiongzhong never expected that Jian Chen would possess martial soul force, which targeted the soul. Xiongzhong's strength at late returnance was completely useless against martial soul force. He was unable to stop it, and any forms of defenses were useless. All he could do was forcefully endure it with his powerful soul. The martial soul force caused a ripple in the surrounding space as it expanded as a wave, moving extremely quick. When it swept over Xiongzhong's body, he immediately trembled. At that moment, he felt like his soul was being assaulted by needles, causing an intense pain. He became dazed while his eyes became blank. Jian Chen's martial soul force was powerful. Martial soul force was known to be able to slaughter experts of the same level instantaneously. Even though Jian Chen possessed a soul at the level of returnants, his understanding regarding martial soul force was far too limited. Coupled with the fact that he did not know any secret techniques, he was unable to use the full power of his martial soul force. As a result, the martial soul force he used was unable to cause any substantial harm to Origin Realm experts. It could only influence them during crucial moments. As a result, Xiongzhong recovered in a single moment after being struck. His soul ached, but it had not been injured. However, that slight instant made Xiongzhong lose his chance to dodge the Qing Suo sword. Under the control of Jian Chen's soul, the Qing Suo sword sliced Xiongzhong's head with a resplendent glow. Blood immediately splattered into the surroundings with some white brain matter. A third of Xiongzhong's head had been cut away. His entire head instantly became dyed with blood. He looked vicious and terrifying. However, Xiongzhong did not die. The sword sliced away a third of his head, but it missed his soul, so he avoided disaster. You actually even know soul attacks. Xiongzhong involuntarily cried out. Jian Chen's talent had already shocked him, yet Jian Chen actually possessed a terrifying soul attack. Xiongzhong's heart churned. Even though the soul attack was unable to harm Xiongzhong's soul, the soul attack had caused him to lose focus for a moment. Even if it was only a split second, it was enough time to make a comeback. Xiongzhong had already planned on fleeing, and now that Jian Chen had used his martial soul force, Xiongzhong became utterly terrified. Without any hesitation, he immediately abandoned Jian Chen and shot toward the tunnel below. Jian Chen was coated in a milky white light. He did not seem to lay off healing for even a single moment. He immediately pursued Xiongzhong when he saw Xiongzhong attempt to flee. He tried everything he could to kill Xiongzhong. After all, he was a late returnance expert. In the entire world of Forsaken Saints, there were only 2 of them, so the death of one would be a great loss for the foreign world. However, some weakness appeared on Jian Chen's face. This was caused by the usage of his martial soul force since he had severely drained the power of his soul. Even his head felt rather heavy. Even though Xiongzhong was heavily injured, he did not slow down at all. He charged back to the Tianyuan continent from outer space in a single moment. He fused with space, appearing outside Changyang Mingyue's domain as if he had teleported. He glanced back at the azure and violet lights, which were rapidly drawing closer to him. Clenching his teeth, he no longer suppressed the power of laws within him. He condensed all his power into his metal mace and then struck the domain as hard as he could. Boom! With a great rumble, the tough domain loudly collapsed due to Xiongzhong's attack. Changyang Mingyue was connected to the domain, so she suffered a severe backlash and vomited blood when it was destroyed. Xiongzhong did not tarry. After vomiting some blood, he shot into the tunnel like a loose arrow, which had originally been covered by the domain. Jian Chen chased after him. When Xiongzhong was about to enter the tunnel, he suddenly froze and stared ahead. 4 figures gradually emerged from the tunnel. They were the 4 other returnance elders from the world of Forsaken Saints. Around another dozen receival experts followed behind them. At that moment, basically all the Origin Realm experts from the foreign world had come. There were only a few of them still stationed in the world of Forsaken Saints. Elder Xiong, how are you in such horrible shape? The 4 returnance experts were shocked and they discovered Xiongzhong. After all, Xiongzhong was not Qing Jingyun or Gongxi Ming. He was a powerful expert only second to Ouyang Yangwen. They then saw Ouyang Yangwen trapped in the azure disk and immediately revealed odd expressions. Was that not the supreme treasure that the Spirit King had bestowed on Kumu so that he could trap the returnance expert of the other world? It was a treasure from their world of forsaken saints, so why had it been used against them, trapping their greatest elder, Ouyang Yangwen? I've underestimated the strength of this world. You must be careful of that person who's comprehended the way of the sword. I'll go heal first. Xiongzhong snorted. Even though he was in a horrible condition, bearing horrifying wounds, he was not happy with what he accomplished. He did not accept that he had been defeated by someone whose true strength had not even reached the origin realm. If that's the case, please take Elder Ouyang back with you so that the Spirit King can remove the treasure from him. Leave the rest of these matters to the four of us, a returnance elder said sternly. His gaze was fixated on Jian Chen, who was coated by a milky white light. Jian Chen did not continue his pursuit. Another 4 returnance experts had appeared from the world of forsaken saints, which caused his face to warp. Not only was he heavily injured right now, he had overused the power of his soul by casting martial soul force. His battle prowess had already taken a heavy hit. It would be rather tough for him to take on just a single mid-returnance expert. Now that 4 had appeared, coupled with more than 10 receival experts, how was the Tian Yuan continent supposed to fend off such a powerful force? He's currently healing. His healing rate is extremely astonishing, so you can't afford to give him any time to catch his breath at all, Xiongzhong said through gritted teeth as he stared at Jian Chen. He did not lose his battle against Jian Chen because of the wounds left by the power of laws but because of Jian Chen's regeneration rate. If Jian Chen had not been able to heal at such a shocking rate and have virtually unending energy, he believed that he would be able to kill Jian Chen. 2 of the 4 returnance elders immediately went to take on Jian Chen. The remaining 2 people charged toward Changyang Mingyue and Tai Ta respectively. The rest of the receival experts began attacking the armies of the Tian Yuan continent without any hesitation. Xiongzhong looked at Ouyang Yangwen. After a moment of hesitation, he waved his hand and froze the space there. He disappeared into the tunnel with Ouyang Yangwen and the azure disk. With the addition of 4 returnance experts and more than 10 receival experts, the balance, which was being maintained with great difficulty, was immediately destroyed. It began to snowball at that moment. The armies of the Tian Yuan continent suffered heavy casualties and many experts fell. Changyang Mingyue possessed the upper hand when she had fought against just Qing Jingyun, but with the entry of a second returnance expert, the pressure she faced immediately increased by several fold. She was forced to retreat due to the combined attacks of the 2 returnance experts. Tai Ta also fought an extraordinarily intense battle against a returnance expert. He just managed to gain the upper hand, but he was unable to end the battle in a short amount of time. Jian Chen faced the combined attacks of 2 mid-returnance experts. If he was in peak condition, he might have been able to hold his ground, but now, it was difficult for him to keep a single mid-returnance expert busy. He was not the opponent of 2 mid-returnance experts with good teamwork. He fell into a disadvantageous position as soon as he began fighting. After clashing a few times, he was struck by a huge sword in the waist, almost cleaved in 2. Pleasant music lingered in the air. The zither melody was frantic and violent or gentle and calm. Shangguan Moor sat in the air as she faced more than 10 receival experts, who had all gone her way. Her music possessed an irresistible charm. The influence of her music on their souls was so powerful that even the receival experts found it difficult to resist. They were all affected. However, the receival experts did not just sit and wait around. 5 receival experts immediately flew out, approaching her with weapons drawn. The experts of the world of forsaken saints placed particular attention on people skilled with soul attacks. They sent 5 people as a single wave to deal with her. A gleam of light flickered through Shangguan Moor's eyes. She played her zither even more frantically. The melody came out with a higher pitch. It possessed an illusion-like feeling, where ripples in space would form wherever the sound waves passed. A few of the receival experts immediately felt their heads lighten with the changes of the music. The influence from the zither melody on them had completely vanished. However, the 5 receival experts who had charged towards Shangguan Moor all displayed different expressions. At that moment, they felt like the charm within the music had become countless times more powerful than before. Their souls trembled violently as their consciousnesses blurred. They came to a halt. After around 5 seconds, the eyes of the 5 receival experts completely dulled and became empty. Shortly after that, the 5 of them turned around and sent a wild barrage of attacks toward their companions. Xia Ming, what are you doing? Are you betraying us? No, they are being controlled by the music, the receival experts from the world of Forsaken Saints all cried out. Having run out of options, they could only send 5 more receival experts to keep their mesmerized companions busy while 2 other receival experts shot towards Shangguan Mu'er. They wanted to stop her from playing the zither so that they could save their companions. At the same time, Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, and Gui Haidao were covered in blood. They fell out of the sky while vomiting blood, falling into the mountains of corpses below. They did not climb up either. No one knew whether or not they were still alive. They did not belong to the origin realm after all. Even with the help of their saint weapons, they could only temporarily keep origin realm experts busy. They obviously could not remain their opponents after some time. Without the 3 of them, the 3 freed receival experts immediately targeted the group of saint emperors who were controlling the ancestral weapons. They consecutively struck out and knocked the weapons out of the sky. Most of the 49 saint emperors died while those who survived suffered unimaginably brutal wounds. In that short moment, the Tianyuan continent had basically lost the strength equivalent to 10 receival experts. Chapter 1536. A cloud of blood. The experts of the Tianyuan continent were immediately forced to retreat due to the vicious attacks of the people from the world of Forsaken Saints. They suffered heavy casualties. The Saint Emperor and Saint King puppets were slain mercilessly by the receival experts of the foreign world. Basically all of them died. There were even some receival experts who attacked the soaring ants. Although they had become much stronger after devouring the flesh and blood of Saint Emperors, quite a few had reached the 8th class. They could only pose a threat to Saint Emperors. They lost all their advantages against Origin Realm experts. An Origin Realm expert extended his hand and used Origin energy to condense a hand that was 1,000 meters large. He reached out with it and caught a countless number of soaring ants. Tightening his hand, they were immediately crushed to pieces. The soaring ants had lost their advantages against Origin Realm experts. Being able to ignore all energy attacks was only useful against Saint Emperors. They could not withstand a single attack created from Origin energy. Their tough bodies became as fragile as paper when attacked by an Origin Realm expert. Shangguan Mu'er had used her music to control 5 receival experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. Under her control, they turned on their own companions, forcing the foreign experts to send another 5 receival experts to keep their companions busy. The 5 controlled experts remained mesmerized. 2 Origin Realm experts aggressively charged towards Shangguan Mu'er on opposite sides. They used their full strength as soon as they arrived near her in an attempt to stop her from playing her zither. Shangguan Mu'er sat in the air while her eyes shone with a cold, enchanting light. She paid attention to the zither that lay on her knees, as if her entire mind had fused with it. She drifted back and avoided the attacks from the 2 receival experts, and at that moment, visible and realistic notes appeared as the heavenly enchantress continued to play her simple zither. Each note possessed terrifying power. Even receival experts needed to carefully face them. The notes surged toward the 2 receival experts who had attempted a pincer attack. They trembled violently before erupting with a thunderous noise. The 2 experts revealed different expressions as they stared at Shangguan Mu'er in shock. They became more serious. The 2 of them had originally believed that controlling 5 receival experts through music was Shangguan Mu'er's limit. They had not thought that she would actually possess the power to attack the 2 of them while controlling their 5 companions. Just the notes required the 2 of them to use their full strength. They were unable to approach her at all. However, what they did not know was that when Shangguan Mu'er fended them off with the powerful notes, a sliver of clarity and that merged into a struggle appeared in the eyes of the 5 mesmerized experts. However, it was soon drowned out by a hollow look once again. Shangguan Muer's skill with the zither had already reached an unbelievable level across the world of the Tian Yuan continent. She stood at the very apex in terms of soul attacks, so there was no hopes for the receival experts to break free from her control. But, clearly, Shangguan Muer's ability to control receival experts was still limited by her current strength. 5 was her absolute limit, and she could not afford continued disturbances, or her control would weaken. Suddenly, a thunderous boom rang out. The formation created by Ada, Air, Asen and ACI violently shook. A crack appeared on the perfect formation, and their 4 figures became vaguely visible in the blurry space that was formed by the crack. Afterward, a fist-sized ball of light shot through the crack with lightning-like speed. A transparent figure was slightly visible in the light. He flew toward the nearby tunnel in horror. He was a receival expert from the world of Forsaken Saints and had been reduced to a soul. The 4 brothers immediately pursued the fleeing soul. They radiated killing intent and sword chi. When they were about to catch up to the receival expert's soul, another receival expert blocked them. He stared at them with a dark expression and communicated using his soul, "I never thought that 4 mere saint emperors would be able to injure my old friend. He's even lost his body." Probably even the Spirit King was not able to achieve something like this in the past. "I, Ma Feng, would have once admired you because of this, but you've almost killed my old friend, so I can only take your lives as vengeance for destroying my friend's body." With that, a glaive just longer than 3 meters appeared in Ma Feng's hand. It radiated a terrifying presence. With a wave, the weapon immediately erupted with a powerful light, which flooded toward the 4 brothers. Formation. The 4 brothers were not moved at all. The 4 of them had made up their minds and had planned to have plenty of bloody battles against many Origin Realm experts long ago. With Ada's command, the 4 brothers immediately created another formation with great teamwork. They had practiced the formation for a very long time, so they were extremely experienced at using it. Their movements were as smooth as flowing water, creating the formation in a single stroke. They blocked Ma Feng's attack. A gleam of light flashed through Ma Feng's eyes. His opinion of the 4 brothers changed once again. He swung his glaive as he began fighting the 4 of them. With the domain of the ice goddess smashed by Xiongzhong, the experts from the foreign world all recovered their peak strength. Coupled with the fact that the continent was no longer protected by the domain, the endless number of terrifying energy ripples immediately caused large swathes of land to collapse. A bottomless pit had formed in a radius of 100,000 kilometers as waves of heat surged up from time to time due to the magma below. The Tian Yuan continent was facing utter defeat. There were just far too many Origin Realm experts. There were even some personally fighting against Saint Emperors, making the Tian Yuan continent suffer severe losses. Aside from Xiao Ling, Tai Ta, and Shangguan Muer, Jian Chen, Xiao Jin, the Sea Goddess, and Changyang Mingyue had all been heavily injured. 3 of them were facing 2 or more opponents. The Sea Goddess was dealing with 3 of them all by herself. Jian Chen and Changyang Mingyue took on 2 returnance experts each. One of the 4 reinforcing returnance experts had not begun fighting yet. He stared at Jian Chen and Tai Ta in interest. Once one of the other 4 elders, who Jian Chen and Tai Ta were fighting, retreated, he would immediately go assist them. But, at this moment, his face twitched. He suddenly gazed into the distance and revealed an expression of surprise. At the same time, the Origin Realm experts who slaughtered the sainthood experts of the Tian Yuan continent all stopped. They all gazed into the distance in the exact same direction. A cloud of blood had suddenly appeared on the distant horizon. It dyed the sky there a demonic red and was rapidly expanding. It moved at an unbelievable speed, turning everything it passed red. Chapter 1537, Houston emerges. What's that? A receival expert from the world of Forsaken Saints cried out. His face was filled with curiosity and doubt as well as some seriousness. Gradually, the same expression appeared on the faces of the other receival experts. A pressure formed from the bottom of their hearts as the cloud of blood neared them. They also felt a certain iciness in their soul. The experts could sense a strong threat from the demonic, blood-like cloud. Even the interest of the returnance expert, who was not fighting, had been roused. He stared at the cloud of blood as his eyes glowed brighter. They seemed like sharp swords, piercing through the cloud and allowing him to see what was going on inside. The cloud was unable to obscure the returnance expert's vision. He discovered an old man in robes made from coarse cloth sitting in the middle of the cloud. The mist of blood charged around him, forming the tremendous cloud of blood. The cloud rapidly drew closer to the battle. A 300-meter-tall skeleton silently hovered behind the old man. It seemed like a small mountain since it was so humongous. It stood right behind the old man, accentuating its size. The skeleton was completely red, as if it was covered with blood. It gave people an extremely corrupt feeling. The skeleton also radiated with a tremendous presence, having reached Receival. We underestimated the strength of this world far too much. Not only do they have several returnance experts, but the amount of Receival experts they possess is far greater than our estimates as well. 2 more Receival experts have actually come. The people of this world really are impressive. They're still able to break through without the presence of origin energy, the remaining returnance elder thought. However, even though the strength displayed by the Tianyuan continent was quite impressive, it was nowhere near enough to deal with the world of Forsaken Saints. Jian Shen was bathed in blood as he fought against the 2 mid-returnance experts in outer space. His wounds became even more severe, where even the origin energy of a Class 9 Radiant Saint Master and the chaotic body were not enough for him to catch up to the rate he was sustaining injuries. If it were not for the fact that he cultivated the tough chaotic body, he probably would have fallen long ago. It's Uncle Xiao. I never thought that Uncle Xiao had broken through. Even though he was in outer space, the cloud of blood on the Tianyuan continent stood out just far too much. It caught Jian Chen's attention as soon as it appeared, and he recognized what the red cloud was. It was condensed from soul-devouring force. The Tianyuan continent had gained 2 origin realm experts all of a sudden with Houston's appearance, but Jian Chen did not lighten up at all. Instead, he sighed inside. The world of Forsaken Saints was just too powerful. Their Receival experts outnumbered the Tianyuan continents by many to 1. Even with Houston's appearance, he could only keep the origin realm experts busy for a little longer. There was still no chance that they would achieve victory. Even after expending all his power, Jian Shen was only able to keep the 2 mid-returnance experts before him busy. He used his sword techniques consecutively, putting everything he had to use. Jian Shen could only use the fusion of the twin swords or the Inata Grand Prime. The backlash from the fusion was far too powerful though. Even ignoring whether or not the Azulet swords would be destroyed, he would definitely pass away due to the backlash. After all, the past master of the swords was a grand exalt. He stood at the apex of the immortals world and had died because of the backlash. As a result, Jian Shen dared not to underestimate the force of the fusion. At the same time, even if he paid his life to use the fusion of the swords to kill the 2 mid-returnance experts fighting him, or all the origin realm experts present, there was still the Spirit King, who was even more terrifying, as well as Xiongzhong and Ouyang Yangwen, 2 late returnance experts. As for the Inata Tower, it was useless apart from being an extremely heavy piece of metal. He was unable to use the power hidden within the tower, and even if he just used the weight of the tower to block the tunnel, the foreign world would only need to send a few origin realm experts to move the heavy tower. Without its artifact spirit, the Inata Tower was a dead object. It's just a pity that the artifact spirit didn't yield to me. Jian Shen sighed and felt regretful. Protector Shui sat on a bed of ice in her silver-white armor, which obscured her face. Only a pair of cold eyes were visible. Currently, she stared in the direction of the death nest and mumbled, "What an impressive formation. It's actually able to overcome the restrictions of the seal here, allowing the person who practices the cultivation method from the demon's world to reach the origin realm." Mo Tianyun, were all your preparations that you made in the death nest just to help out this person? Just what are you scheming by putting so much effort into something like this? But that doesn't matter. As long as you don't lay your hands on Her Majesty, none of this has anything to do with me. A cloud of blood blanketed most of the sky above the Tianyuan continent. Houston sat in the cloud as he pointed at the ground. The huge skeleton behind him immediately stepped out of the cloud, appearing before everyone. When a few of the experts from the Tianyuan continent saw the skeleton, they were all surprised. Disbelief filled their faces. They had entered the death nest and fought over the saint's fruit, so they recognized the skeleton with a single glance. It was the same terrifying existence in the depths of the death nest. They would have been slaughtered back then if it were not for the mysterious expert who had interfered. The skeleton soundlessly roared as it charged toward a receival expert from the world of forsaken saints with a huge bone club. At the same time, Houston attacked from the cloud of blood. The entire cloud churned and shrank, condensing until it was 30,000 meters across. As the cloud shrank, the demonic red light glowed even brighter. At the same time, the pressure that the receival experts felt grew stronger and stronger, as if the existence of the cloud was severely impacting them. Suddenly, the entire cloud began to wildly churn. The huge face of a demon, which was 3,000 meters wide, condensed from the cloud. It opened its terrifying mouth and sucked. Immediately, a tremendous presence appeared and several dozen saint emperors from the foreign world were sucked away. With chilling shrieks, all the saint emperors were corroded away and reduced to bloody puddles, which fused with the demon. The demonic face seemed to have consumed some heavenly medicine after absorbing the puddles of blood. It rapidly became more consolidated as it became much stronger than before. This person is strange. Let's go together and kill him on the spot. We can take his cultivation method. The receival experts were all stern. In the end, someone yelled and 3 people immediately charged into the sky together. They sent out their best attacks, striking the demonic face at the same time with their devastating weapons. Chapter 1538, Power of the Demonic Arts. The blood-red, demonic face seemed extremely vicious with its blurry facial features, appearing just like a fiend. It was terrifying and sent shivers down people's spines. Coupled with the scarlet blanket of clouds above, it caused people to shiver more. Just a single glance was enough to cause people's hairs to stand on end. The empty eyes of the huge demonic face suddenly shifted to the 3 receival experts charging over. It opened its mouth, and a powerful suction wrapped around the 3 of them. The force was extremely terrifying, and they found it rather difficult to resist. The 3 of them had charged at the demonic face at a terrifying speed, so coupled with the pulling force, they moved even faster. The 3 receival experts were all very stern. When they approached the mouth, a tremendous energy surged out of their bodies, forming a suit of energy armor in the blink of an eye, which pulsed with power. Their weapons emitted light rays that were several hundred meters long as they stabbed at the giant face. The face violently trembled after receiving the attacks from the 3 receival experts. The face blurred, as if it was about to transform back into a dense layer of clouds. At the same time, the 3 foreign experts vanished into the mouth of the face. They were surrounded by an extremely dense layer of clouds, making it impossible to see them. As for the 3 of them, their sight was filled with red. They could not penetrate the cloud even with their vision. In the blood-red world, the 3 of them immediately felt a presence suddenly appear in their souls, powerful enough to cause their hearts to heavily beat. They felt even more pressured. Dense layers of blood-red mist constantly churned from everywhere, surrounding them. When the mist came in contact with their armor, hissing sounds rang out. Their armor was rapidly eaten away. You're just messing around. Do you really think that you can deal with the 3 of us with a single secret technique? If you have the courage, face us in open battle. One of them sneered. A tremendous presence radiated from him, and with a thunderous boom, a visible sound wave spread out in all directions. After he finished speaking, he raised his 2-handed sword. It was bright like the sun. He swung it viciously at the empty space before him with devastating might. A ray of light, several hundred meters long, tore through the mist in front of him. Wherever it passed, the surrounding mist trembled and surged away. The attack disappeared into the mist. At the same time, the other two receival experts attacked as well. They were all extremely powerful. Any single move they made possessed supreme might, having already exceeded the limits of this world. Under their simultaneous attacks, the blood-red world constantly dulled. The clouds of blood in the surroundings seemed to have grown thinner. However, the energy armor they were wearing was constantly being eaten away. The mist in the surroundings seemed to be endless. Even after clearing away most of it from a certain region, it was immediately replaced with even more mist. The mist would constantly dissolve their armor if it made any contact. It was extremely corrosive, and the three of them did not let the mist come in contact with their bodies. All they could do was continuously pour energy into their armor to maintain them. Houston sat in the center of the cloud. The blood-red mist around him surged as muffled booms constantly appeared. He stared at the three receival experts in the cloud with deep, calm eyes. He slowly raised his hand. The moment he raised his hand, the cloud violently shifted. Endless, chilling shrieks of fiends vaguely seemed audible as vicious, demonic faces appeared one after another. As they shrieked and screamed, they appeared in and out of visibility in the mist. However, Houston did not seem to sense all of this. His eyes remained locked on the three receival experts. He remained seated where he was before, extending a finger at the three people with his raised hand. The cloud immediately began to churn even more violently. The demonic faces appeared visible now. Every single one of them was formed from the blood-red mist. They all produced chilling roars and shrieks. They menacingly lunged toward the three receival experts. They were densely packed and seemingly endless. The three receival experts could hear the chilling cries of the faces from very far away. They all became extremely stern. "Humph, you're just fucking around." The three of them coldly snorted. They stood with their backs against each other as caution filled their faces. An endless sea of demonic faces appeared before them, flooding in from all directions. They were completely encircled in a single moment. The faces gnawed away at their armor. There were even some faces that silently invaded their bodies when they came in contact with their heads. These faces wormed their way into their souls, causing the faces of the three experts to warp in pain. "Oh no, these things can actually harm the soul," one of them cried out and struck out with a palm strike. He squashed several thousand of the faces with a huge palm that was 300 meters wide and condensed from origin energy, wiping out all the faces in an entire region. But, the next moment, even more faces surged up. The fiends that had been shattered reformed from the mist in just a few seconds. They seemed undestroyable. The palm condensed from origin energy dulled significantly after tearing through countless fiends. This was because the palm was covered with the faces now. Under their devouring, the energy of the palm rapidly weakened while the cloud of blood slowly strengthened. The three receival experts were completely surrounded by a powerful layer of origin energy, preventing the faces from reaching their souls. They fought as hard as they could, killing countless demonic faces. However, the faces would reform right after they were destroyed. They were unkillable. On the other hand, the three experts' origin energy was being consumed at all times within the cloud. Their abilities were a huge expenditure. They wanted to find the person controlling the cloud, but their eyes seemed completely useless in the cloud. They were blind, unable to find anyone at all. "These things can't be killed. We've fallen into a hopeless situation. We can't continue like this. Leave immediately," one of the Origin Realm experts commanded. Without any hesitation, the three of them immediately flew away. They could all sense that the cloud of blood was draining their powers while it was becoming more and more powerful. In the center of the cloud, Houston suddenly stood up. He took a single step and immediately disappeared, appearing before the fleeing experts as if he had teleported. With a wave of his hand, he maneuvered the power of the cloud. A sea of blood seemed to have been conjured out of nothing. It formed a rapid stream that drowned out the three experts. Chapter 1539. A Returnance expert steps in the blood-red stream tossed and turned, connecting the sky with the ground. It produced an endless rumble, as if countless demonic faces were shrieking and roaring. The three receival experts were swallowed by the blood-red stream. They immediately sensed that the mysterious power in the stream was rapidly suppressing their powers. They could not even use half of their power. Thus, they could no longer protect themselves. They bobbed up and down in the rapids, like tiny boats in the vast sea. They were unable to control themselves at all. In just a short few seconds, the barrier of origin energy around the three experts shattered, exposing their bodies. The blood-like liquid made direct contact with their skin. Their bodies immediately began to dissolve at a visible rate. Their bodies dissolved in the rapids, becoming a part of the blood-like water. All their flesh and origin energy was turned into the river's power. This was an inhumane torture. The three receival experts all produced chilling shrieks, unable to break free from the stream. When the three receival experts were about to pass away, the returnant's elder, who had not taken part in a battle yet, shifted his eyes to the cloud. A gleam of light immediately flashed through his eyes as he murmured with a deep voice, "You're actually able to force one early and two mid-receival experts into such a state in such a short amount of time with strength at early receival, and you don't even seem to be using your full strength. I sure did underestimate you earlier." With that, he no longer stood by and finally began to move. He hurled a punch toward the cloud from over 10 kilometers away. The punch shattered space, reducing the area several thousand meters away from him into a pitch-black hole. A terrifying energy tore through space, directly colliding with the cloud of blood in the distance. Boom! With a deafening boom, the cloud of blood began to violently tremble before rapidly collapsing. In just a few seconds, the entire cloud vanished, revealing Houston, who had remained hidden in it the whole time. Houston staggered back through the air as he trembled. A smear of paleness appeared on his face. Not only had the punch from the returnance expert destroyed his cloud, but it had injured him quite a bit as well. After all, he was only at early receival. Although he possessed impressive strength due to the Empyrean demon arts, able to kill mid-receival experts, he was still not the opponent of a returnance expert. As the cloud dispersed, the three receival experts broke free. They avoided death, but a portion of their bodies had been eaten away by the stream of blood. They looked utterly terrifying. They were bathed in blood with parts of their bodies missing. Even their heads had shrunk in size while their noses and ears had been completely eaten away. "Go heal up," the returnance expert said coldly. His gaze remained fixed on Houston the entire time as an odd light flickered through his eyes. "Thank you for saving us, Elder Zhang." The three receival experts no longer lingered around after thanking their benefactor. They all returned to the world of forsaken saints through the tunnel. On the other hand, Elder Zhang arrived before Houston. His face was emotionless and cold. He stared at Houston condescendingly and said, "What is the name of your cultivation method, for it to possess such power?" "The Empyrean demon arts." Houston replied with a heavy voice. His face was extremely stern. An extremely slim spike that was 4 inches long suddenly appeared in his hand. Soul-devouring force permeated the spike as he stabbed it at Elder Zhang with lightning-like speed. The cultivation method of the Bloodsword sect was a modified version of the Empyrean demon arts. The baleful force cultivated by people of the sect was a weakened form of soul-devouring force. As a result, soul-devouring force obviously possessed the unique characteristics of baleful force. It was countless times more powerful baleful force. The Elder Zhang was affected by the soul-devouring force the moment Houston stabbed out. He became dazed as blankness filled his eyes. However, he was a returnance expert, who much more powerful than Houston. He recovered in the blink of an eye, but at that time, Houston's spike had already arrived before his forehead. Elder Zhang narrowed his eyes. In a crucial moment, he used his hand to catch the spike as he urgently retreated. He dodged the fatal strike, but a bead of blood appeared on his forehead. The spike had pierced his skin, only slightly piercing his skull. Elder Zhang was covered in cold sweat. The hand he had used to catch the spike bled profusely as well. It had been injured even though it was protected by origin energy. A soul attack. This is actually a soul attack. What power did you just use? It actually possesses the ability to influence the soul. Elder Zhang was no longer able to keep his composure. He questioned Houston in shock. But his face was soon replaced with joy. Before Houston could answer, he immediately said, "Hand over your cultivation method and I'll spare you." Elder Zhang spoke urgently. He was filled with greed. Houston's cultivation method had piqued his interest very much. He was rather eager to obtain it. This cultivation method was just far too great. Not only could it allow an early receival expert to kill 2 mid-receival and 1 early receival expert, but it also possessed the capability of attacking the soul. Even returnance experts would face the threat of dying if they lost focus. Houston sneered when he heard that Elder Zhang actually wanted his cultivation method. "You sure have some insight. You understand just how extraordinary my cultivation method is, which is why I possess this strength and not because of some secret techniques. However, even if I give you my cultivation method, you have no right to practice it." Houston poured some strength into his right hand and snatched the spike back. Elder Zhang originally held the spike in his hand, so as it was recalled, his hand was injured once again. It was covered in blood and almost chopped in half. Elder Zhang did not seem to sense his injuries at all. He sneered, "Since even you have the right to practice it, I obviously have the right as well. I can only take it myself if you're not willing to offer it up. Even if the cultivation method isn't on you, I have ways of drawing it out of your soul. It's just a little harder, but you'll die for sure." Elder Zhang's eyes glowed with a frightening light. After witnessing the power of the Empyrean demon arts, he had decided he would obtain this cultivation method. He then raised his bloody hand and powerful origin energy surged out. He directly sent it toward Houston. Houston felt no fear at all. His red spike turned into a streak of red light as it stabbed toward Elder Zhang. The soul-devouring force, which covered the spike, affected Elder Zhang's soul again. Elder Zhang was now prepared after having experienced the soul attack the first time. The moment Houston stabbed out, he retreated, immediately reappearing over 10 kilometers away. He was so far away that the soul-devouring force was unable to reach him. At the same time, a sword appeared in his hand, and he stabbed out with it. It tore through space and sent powerful sword chi toward Houston. The sword chi moved just far too quickly, arriving before Houston in the blink of an eye. Moreover, the sword chi had locked onto Houston's presence, so he was unable to dodge it. All he could do was forcefully endure it. This was a powerful strike from a returnance expert. No matter how impressive Houston's cultivation method was, his strength still remained at early receival. He became extremely stern as he faced the terrifying sword chi. The soul-devouring force on the spike became as dense as possible before shooting toward the sword chi as a dazzling red glow. A thumb-sized orb that was a blood-red color hovered above his head, producing a shroud of red light that enveloped Houston. Boom! Houston's spike collided with the sword chi and its glow immediately dulled. The clothes on his right arm were torn to shreds before being reduced to dust. The sword chi from Elder Zhang dulled slightly after having been obstructed by the red spike. However, its power still could not be underestimated. Without slowing down at all, it struck the red shroud created by the Empyrean demon orb. The Empyrean demon orb was the famed treasure from the greatest demon monarch of the demon's world, the Empyrean demon monarch. It was an extremely powerful demon artifact, but using its true power required an extremely powerful strength as well. Houston could not even use 1/100th of the orb's power with his strength at early receival, so the shroud collapsed in just a few short seconds after being struck by the sword chi. The remaining sword chi hit Houston's chest after having made its way through the many obstructions. Spurt. Houston vomited blood and paled. A vicious slash appeared on his chest, dyeing his coarse clothes red. "Let me ask you one last time. Will you hand over the Empyrean demon arts or not? I will never make it difficult for you if you hand it over, but if you don't, I can only put in the effort and extract it from your soul." Your soul will also perish during that process. Elder Zhang arrived before Houston. He did not hurry to continue the fight. Instead, he asked for the cultivation method again. He was enraptured by the Empyrean demon arts. Chapter 1540. The white tiger emerges at this moment. A tremendous tiger roar reverberated across the land along with a surging presence. A huge white figure shot over from the distance. It moved extremely quick, as if it was able to overcome any distance by teleporting. It was 10 million kilometers away but arrived on the battlefield in an instant. No one could discern the speed of the white figure, returnance experts included. All of them felt that something had gone wrong with their vision since a tremendous, white figure suddenly appeared in the sky. It was a huge tiger that stood 300 meters tall. It looked like a mountain and radiated a tremendous, invisible aura, causing the surroundings to tremble. The white tiger possessed a huge pair of snow-white wings that were several hundred meters long. Unfurled, they blotted out the sun, and with just a slight twitch, they would raise great gusts of wind. This was the white tiger. It had finally inherited the legacy in the Beast God Hall. Its strength had increased drastically, reaching the origin realm. Even though it was only at early receival, its tremendous pressure surprised all the receival experts from the foreign world. A gray mist seemed to revolve around the white tiger. It was extremely powerful, radiating with the suffocating presence of slaughter. The power seemed to belong to the world and had exceeded the origin realm. All the returnance experts from the world of Forsaken Saints narrowed their eyes when they noticed the mist. Not only had the white tiger reached receival while on the Beast God continent, but it had also comprehended the true essence of life and death. It had comprehended the way of slaughter and now possessed the power of laws. It's the winged tiger god. Cries rang through the surroundings. The people from the 4 races on the Tianyuan continent were familiar with the famed winged tiger god. They stared at the huge tiger in the air in a daze. Suddenly, the white tiger raised its head and stared into outer space. It could clearly see a bloody Jianchen fending off the attacks from 2 returnance experts. Its eyes immediately let out a vicious light that was blood-red. With a tremendous killing intent, it produced a deafening roar as it bounded toward outer space. The white tiger immediately vanished with a leap. It reappeared in outer space as if it had teleported, completely ignoring the distance in between. It swung its claws and strands of terrifying force of slaughter rained down on one of the returnance experts. A battle between a tiger and a human began. The mid-returnance expert was very fearful of the force of slaughter. Just like the way of the sword, it used power from a law, a key beyond the origin realm. Under standard circumstances, only people at godhood could control these powers. Even though the white tiger was only at early receival, it could control the force of slaughter, so its battle prowess was extraordinary. It was invincible among its own cultivation level unless it came across someone else who could use the power of laws. Combined with the fact that the mid-returnance expert feared the force of slaughter, the white tiger was able to fight on equal ground. With the white tiger keeping one of the mid-returnance experts busy, the pressure on Jian Chen immediately lessened. He used what time he could to heal. He immediately took out a droplet of sap from a stalk of amethyst spiritual bamboo and placed it between his eyes with lightning-like speed to make up for when he overextended his soul earlier. Once he returned to peak condition, even 2 mid-returnance experts would not be his opponent. It was at this time that the sea goddess was heavily injured. Under the combined attacks of 3 receival experts, she was blown away and uncontrollably spit out blood. The 3 receival experts immediately pursued the sea goddess, surrounding her in a triangle. They all attacked together, covering the sea goddess in blood. She suffered unimaginable injuries. Her body began to collapse, and in the crucial moment before death, the sea goddess soul decisively emerged. She used a secret technique to burn the power of her soul in exchange for lightning-like speed. She fled from the battlefield. With the departure of the sea goddess, one of the receival experts immediately charged toward the people below. He arrived before Kaya, who was controlling the soaring ants, and grabbed her without saying anything. He then disappeared into the distance. Kaya was only a first heavenly layer Saint Emperor, so she could not resist an origin realm expert at all. However, the moment Kaya was taken away, the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast immediately became flustered and uneasy while fighting another receival expert. It wanted to go save Kaya, but it was trapped in a battle, unable to break free. There was a barren mountain several million kilometers away from the battlefield. It was covered in snow and ice. Although the season was hot summer and the sun was beating down on the earth, it was unable to melt the frost. The entire world seemed to be a tundra as far as the eye could see. At this moment, the whistling wind suddenly picked up. The receival expert had arrived on the snow-covered mountain with Kaya. "What do you want?" Kaya coldly stared at the middle-aged man. She showed no fear, and instead, an iciness slowly covered her face. However, there was still a sliver of despair in the depths of her eyes. The middle-aged man was covered in blood, either his own or the sea goddess. He stared at Kaya calmly and said, "I am a protector of the sacred spirit hall from the world of forsaken saints, Shiyang. You don't need to be nervous. I have no intentions of harming you. I just want you to yield to me and become a maid of mine." "That's impossible. You can kill me, but I will never yield to you as a maid," Kaya coldly replied. Her voice was filled with resolution. Shiyang smiled and said, "There's no need for you to turn me down so quickly. Don't worry, I don't want you to become my maid to serve me. Instead, your ability has caught my eye. Those flying insects are under your control, and that powerful magical beast that's enough to fend off origin realm experts must have taken you as a master as well. Otherwise, why would that magical beast constantly pay attention to you while it fought another protector? That's all that's caught my eye, because I need that power. So are you willing to yield now? Don't worry, I will never abuse you." "You're dreaming," Kaya coldly replied, declining without any hesitation. She had already made up her mind. Even if she died, she would never yield to Shiyang. Shiyang frowned slightly after seeing how determined Kaya was. He said, "Girl, I didn't want to harm you, but if you insist, I might really have to do some things that I don't want to do." Kaya's face paled slightly, but she firmly replied, "If that's the case, then kill me. I will never yield to you." Shi Yang's expression revealed his annoyance as his eyes glowed with a frosty light. He said, "Then don't blame me. If I kill you, that powerful magical beast will probably recover its freedom if it survives. Since it's taken you as its master, it'll be hard to take. I don't wish for that to happen, but I just happen to know a puppet technique. I just need to disperse most of your soul and keep a sliver of it. I can refine you into a puppet with that, and that way, I can use the puppet to control those insects. It's a little troublesome and it might fail, but that's the best option available right now." What Shiyang did not know was that the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast had never accepted Kaya as its master. Instead, it followed Kaya out of its own free will, sticking to her obediently because it chose to, but to everyone else, it seemed like it was serving Kaya. As for the soaring ants, Kaya was not in possession of the method of controlling them. Instead, they abided her commands because of the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast. Kaya was completely pale after hearing what would happen to her. She staggered back unintentionally. As soon as she thought about how Shiyang wanted to use a sliver of her soul to refine her into a puppet, she shivered uncontrollably. After a short moment of hesitation, she gritted her teeth and slammed her palm toward her forehead. She wanted to commit suicide. She knew that she did not have the ability to flee from an origin realm expert. In order to avoid the fate of being turned into a puppet, this was the only choice she could make. However, Shiyang would never watch Kaya kill herself. He grabbed her hand and coldly said, "You're thinking too highly of yourself if you think you can commit suicide before me." With that, Shiyang extended a finger between Kaya's eyes. His finger was like a sharp blade, penetrating her skull. His entire finger disappeared into her head. Bright red blood flowed from between Kaya's eyes. Agony filled her face. Shi Yang's finger had basically arrived before her soul. At that moment, her soul became trapped by his power. It was impossible for her to flee by abandoning her body. I only need to keep a sliver of your soul to turn you into a puppet. The rest can go, said Shi Yang. He put force into his finger and injected it into Kaiya's soul. Boom! Immediately, Kaiya felt her head loudly explode. She felt a heart-wrenching pain, causing her body to tremble violently. She could clearly sense her soul collapse bit by bit as her consciousness gradually blurred. Chapter 1541, The Might of a Gaze. Will I really just die like this? Will I be reduced to a puppet controlled by someone else in the future? As she gradually approached death, she felt both liberated and intense regret. She still held unforgettable feelings for the Kaler tribe that had raised her. She struggled to forget her father who had cared for her. The destruction of the Kaler tribe had also been the most sorrowful part of her life. Even if she died now, she would be liberated since she would never forget about the Kaler tribe as long as she lived. However, she did not want to become a puppet controlled by someone else after death. However, the difference in strength between her and an Origin Realm experts was just far too large. Even though she was filled with regret, she was powerless to make a difference. Kaiya's consciousness became blurrier and blurrier. However, the intense agony from her collapsing soul grew duller and duller. Her sense of pain gradually vanished as she inched towards death. Shi Yang was extremely stern. He had learned the method of creating a puppet from an ancient book. He had never used it before, so he was very careful with it. The rate Kaiya's soul was collapsing at was extremely slow. He was afraid that he would make the entire thing collapse if he was not careful. If he had the time, he would have never tried creating a puppet in such a hurry. He would have definitely captured some saint emperors and experimented on them so that he could gather enough experience before trying it on Kaiya. However, he just did not have that much time to experiment. He had no idea when the other protectors or elders of the sacred spirit hall would notice Kaiya as well. Once Kaiya caught the eye of someone stronger than him, he would not be able to beat them with his strength, which was why he took her away in such a hurry. He wanted to turn Kaiya into a puppet in the shortest amount of time possible. He wanted to control the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast and the endless soaring ants. Once Kaiya turned into a puppet, she would belong to him. At that time, even if elders were interested in her, he had no need to fear because the current Spirit King would never let Origin Realm experts fight among themselves. As Kaiya's soul collapsed, Shi Yang sent a sliver of his own soul into Kaiya's sea of consciousness as well. He used the power of his own soul to protect the remainder of Kaiya's soul, which he would use to make a puppet. When a sliver of Shi Yang's soul entered Kaiya's sea of consciousness, he became stunned. He discovered, to his surprise, that Kaiya's soul was not strong but her sea of consciousness was extremely vast. It seemed like a limitless universe, unbelievably tremendous, making him feel like it was boundless. What kind of sea of consciousness is this? Why is it so large? Shi Yang was completely stunned, deeply shocked by the size of the sea of consciousness. At that moment, he felt like he had not arrived in a person's sea of consciousness but a whole different universe. He had never seen such a tremendous sea of consciousness. In fact, he had never even heard of one. His Origin Realm soul seemed so puny in her sea of consciousness, like an ant that lived beneath the sky. At this moment, a dazzling light appeared in the depths of the sea of consciousness, spreading through it at an unbelievable speed. In a short moment, her entire sea of consciousness was occupied by the light. It poured into every corner, lighting up everything like it was daytime. A hazy figure silently appeared in the endless stretch of white light. Her body was illusory and slender, only visible as a blurry figure as if she was covered by a divine light. The figure silently arrived before the strand of Shi Yang's soul. The figure did nothing, but Shi Yang's soul miserably shrieked. The part he had sent into Kaiya's head actually collapsed at that moment, reduced to pure power, which had fused with the hazy figure. Shi Yang vomited blood outside the sea of consciousness. His face became extremely pale. It lacked a shred of blood. Great fear filled his face as well. What the hell was that? Shi Yang wildly bellowed inside his mind. The hazy figure had actually wiped out a portion of his soul without finding it difficult. He did not even know how that sliver of his soul had been annihilated. All of its power was just perfectly drained away. He was fearful of something so strange. Without any hesitation, Shi Yang immediately turned around to flee. At that moment, he completely lost interest in killing Kaya. The only thought in his head was to flee, to leave as quickly as possible. It was also at that moment when Kaya suddenly opened her eyes. Blood dripped from between her eyes, but her gaze was utterly terrifying. Just her gaze possessed unbelievably great power, and with just that glance, the space 1,000 kilometers away collapsed. Any mountains in the surroundings turned to dust at that moment as well. Only the mountain Kaya stood on remained, becoming the only one in a radius of 1,000 kilometers. Shi Yang's body had disintegrated as well. He lost his mind in a single moment. His powerful soul was pulled back into Kaya's forehead as pure power. Under this gaze, an Origin Realm expert had died without even being able to put up a fight. Even Shi Yang himself had no idea what he had been killed by, right up until his death. Shi Yang's body disappeared from the surroundings. There was no corpse, only a pile of dust that fell from the sky. It joined the dust from the countless mountains, making it impossible to locate his remains anymore. At this moment, Kaya slowly raised her head. She stared into outer space at the tremendous formation hidden. It trembled violently when her eyes landed on it. This was the powerful formation that Protector Shui had secretly cast along with the help from the ice goddess from a whole different world. It actually showed signs of collapse at that moment, unable to withstand the gaze that came from Kaya. Her gaze was just far too powerful. Even the fate of the world could be decided by it. The presence of the ice goddess, Kaya stared at the huge formation and murmured. But, the next moment, her body shook violently, almost falling down. The light in her eyes rapidly dulled as well. I'm too weak. This is still not the time to awaken. Kaya's voice became extremely soft. Her body shook a few more times before she closed her eyes and fell into a coma. At the same time, Protector Shui, who sat on a bed of ice in the ice goddess hall, suddenly opened her eyes. Her cold, merciless eyes became filled with shock, and she became flustered at that moment. She vanished a moment later and reappeared outside the ice goddess hall. She stared into outer space in shock. The expression she made under her helmet became solemn, an emotion she rarely ever showed. Chapter 1542, Ouyang Yangwen, who is it? Who has discovered this place and almost caused the formation to collapse? Protector Shui raised her head as she stood on the divine hall. She seemed to have fused with the surrounding space, but she was no longer as calm and composed as before. She no longer seemed to possess the confidence that came from having the entire world in her control. She was instead filled with surprise and shock. With a single movement, Protector Shui appeared in outer space. She was far away from the Tianyuan continent. The massive planet where the Tianyuan continent lay only seemed to be the size of a head. Protector Shui glanced around the area around her and scattered the senses of her soul in attempt to find any traces or marks. However, she found nothing after searching for quite some time. She did not find any presences that could cause the formation to collapse or any unique pulses of energy either. This person shouldn't be from this world. They almost caused the formation to collapse, which means they used power beyond godhood. Such great power will never be allowed by the laws here, so the laws definitely would have rejected it and caused huge ripples. It's impossible for this place to be so calm. Unless that person's actually a Grand Prime, which is enough for even the laws of this world to shake in their presence. But even if a Grand Prime has come here and has done nothing, a large region of space would have collapsed. The space here is perfectly fine and calm, so a Grand Prime definitely did not come personally. With that being the case, that person's definitely still in the Saints' world. I wonder who has discovered this place and whether they're a friend or foe. In the past, before the ice goddess, Her Majesty, had found the world where the snow goddess, Her Majesty, would reincarnate, she had asked a few old friends to search with her. If the expert who has just found this place is a friend, then I have no need to worry, but if they're an enemy, Protector Shui became extremely stern. She silently vanished and crossed a huge distance, reappearing in a secret room within the ice goddess hall. With a wave of her hand, the door was shut tightly with a heavy sound. Protector Shui was now seated in the center of the room. An indescribably tremendous pressure radiated from her body. It was countless times more powerful than anything a returnance expert could exhibit. If even just a trace of it managed to leak out, the world would change and space would shatter. The Tian Yuan continent would be reduced to pieces, disappearing from existence entirely. However, the pressure was completely locked up in the room. None of it leaked out at all. It was not even able to shake the room. Protector Shui was solemn as her eyes glowed. Her hands constantly formed seals before her chest. Extremely great power would radiate from each seal. This power exceeded the origin realm, belonging to godhood. In fact, it was power equivalent to the very apex of godhood. She was holding a clairvoyance in an attempt to find out whether the expert from the higher world was a friend or foe. She did not directly look into the expert's identity. She knew that they were extremely powerful, far beyond something she could search for. If she tried forcefully, she would fail and suffer a dangerous backlash. She might even be noticed by the expert. As a result, she took an indirect approach. She looked for some information that would allow her to deduce the expert's identity and find out whether they were on her side or not. This was extremely important. It was directly connected to the survival of the snow goddess, so she could not afford to be careless. Protector Shui's actions and the changes to the terrifying formation that sealed the world did not catch the attention of Jian Chen or the experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. They had no idea what had just happened. Only Fairy Hao Yu in the Bright Moon Divine Hall noticed the changes. She opened her eyes the same time Protector Shui did. She then gazed into outer space. Although she was just a soul, her gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the walls of Divine Hall. She saw the moment that the formation was about to collapse. Fairy Hao Yu's face was also rather stern, but she returned to normal, like nothing had happened at all. The great battle on the Tian Yuan continent was extremely intense. The army of the four races grew weaker and weaker. They sustained extremely heavy casualties, and the shockwaves of battle between so many Saint Emperors and Origin Realm experts had already damaged the continent. The entire continent constantly shook as cracks spread across its surface, like chasms leading to hell. The beautiful continent was divided by the cracks. It was no longer whole. It had been split into 4 sections by 4 extremely thick cracks. As Jian Chen's wounds gradually healed, he gradually gained the upper hand against the mid-returnance expert he was fighting in outer space. Killing his opponent would become certain once he made a full recovery. Suddenly, a powerful strand of sword chi shot out of the tunnel with a chilling killing intent. It tore through the sky, like a dragon, sweeping through an entire region. It wreaked havoc, causing space to collapse and the ground to shake. It was so powerful that it suppressed all the experts on the battlefield, catching the attention of countless people. They were all surprised. It's Elder Ouyang. Elder Ouyang has come. I'd like to see how this person withstands Elder Ouyang's rage. All the experts of the foreign world immediately cried out while the Receival Protectors all let out a breath of relief. They knew how powerful Elder Ouyang was. As soon as he entered the battle, there was no one in this world who could stop him. Elder Ouyang walked steadily out of the tunnel. His face was sunken while a sea-like presence permeated the surroundings. Within it was uncontainable anger. He was Ouyang Yangwen, the strongest beneath the Spirit King in the world of Forsaken Saints and the Great Elder among the 8 Returnance Elders. His status was only second to the Spirit King, yet as soon as he arrived in this world, he had been trapped by the treasure that had originated from their own world. He even had to be carried away by Xiongzhong, someone he never got along with. How could he endure that humiliation with his pride? This was an embarrassment. It was a permanent stain to his name. I will make all the origin realm experts of this world kneel before me. I will only ease my anger then. Ouyang Yangwen's face was sunken. He spoke very gently, but his voice was able to penetrate everything. It resonated throughout the world, and even the experts fighting in outer space could hear it clearly. Chapter 1543, Onslaught, 1. The people from the world of Forsaken Saints were in high spirits after listening to Ouyang Yangwen. Even the origin realm experts from the foreign world possessed a certain level of blind faith in Ouyang Yangwen, let alone the Saint Emperors. It was not because of how respectable he was, but because of his power. The origin realm elders and protectors who understood Ouyang Yangwen from the world of Forsaken Saints knew just how great Ouyang Yangwen's battle prowess was. Although he still belonged to late returnants, he had gained some rough comprehension of the way of the sword. He had not truly begun to comprehend the way of the sword like the Spirit King, but being able to comprehend a little was already extremely impressive. Some of the protectors and elders even believed that Ouyang Yangwen possessed the strength to fight those who had just broken through to reciprocity. Jian Chen's face slightly changed in outer space. He suddenly turned his head toward the Tian Yuan continent. Even though the Tian Yuan continent was tiny in his eyes, he saw Ouyang Yangwen with a single glance. His face sank. I never thought that Ouyang Yangwen would break free so soon. That Spirit King from the other world must have released him from the disc, Jian Chen thought. He could feel just how bad the situation was. While in peak condition, his battle against Xiongzhong had been rather difficult, yet Ouyang Yangwen's strength superseded Xiongzhong's, not to mention the fact that he was still injured right now. He probably would not be Ouyang Yangwen's opponent even in peak condition. Suddenly, Ouyang Yangwen attacked. He opened his palm and a finger-sized sword immediately condensed. It hovered above his palm, and the next moment, it suddenly expanded from the size of a toothpick to the size of a standard sword. It shone with a sharp light. With a twist of his wrist, Ouyang Yangwen gripped the sword. At that moment, the sword immediately erupted with an extremely powerful ripple of energy. The surroundings shook and the ground cracked under the ripple of energy. He took a single step and his entire presence suddenly skyrocketed. He stabbed out. A humongous sword chi left the sword with a devastating might. It turned the space it moved through into darkness as it shot toward Changyang Mingyue. Ouyang Yangwen's first target was not Jian Chen but Changyang Mingyue. Changyang Mingyue's clothes were as white as snow and her silver hair fluttered despite the absence of wind. A sternness filled her beautiful eyes at that moment. A new ability had appeared in her head. It was similar to when she had used the domain of the snow goddess and by fate earlier. She had no inkling of it at all, but it had suddenly appeared in her head. Before Changyang Mingyue had any time to think about it, she immediately used the ability that had suddenly appeared. She extended her left index finger and a strand of snow-white profound ice chi drifted out. She quickly drew a circle before her, and as soon as the circle was completed, it turned into a mirror of ice. It shot toward Ouyang Yangwen, who stood near the tunnel, and the sword chi that drew near. The sword chi and ice mirror collided. The mirror immediately flashed with a white light. Silently, a crack appeared on it, which spread outward like a web, covering the entire mirror in a single moment. In the end, it shattered with a clink. The moment the mirror shattered, Changyang Mingyue grunted as well. Blood spurted from her mouth. At the same time, the sword chi seemed to bounce off the mirror. It shot back toward Ouyang Yangwen, but it was half as powerful as before. A gleam of light flashed through Ouyang Yangwen's eyes as he smiled. He said, "Interesting. I've never seen an attack like this before," reflecting my sword chi back at me. With that, Ouyang Yangwen shot out a second sword chi. It was slightly more powerful than the first, so when it collided with the reflected sword chi, it produced a great boom. The reflected sword chi dispersed while the second sword chi continued toward Changyang Mingyue without slowing down at all. Changyang Mingyue clenched her teeth and created another ice mirror, but this time, it failed to reflect the sword qi. It shattered to pieces and the sword qi passed through Changyang Mingyue. Changyang Mingyue coughed up blood 3 times as she was blown back. She was severely injured. Ouyang Yangwen raised his sword above his head and immediately shot out a streak of light that was several thousand meters long. It stabbed into the sky, so from afar, it seemed like a huge pillar of light. It shattered space. Its surroundings were riddled with pitch-black cracks. It cleaved to one side like it was unstoppable, headed toward Tai Ta. Tai Ta also became stern. His presence soared as a powerful battle intent gathered in his body. It condensed into an illusory axe above his head. As he raised up the glowing axe in his hand, it fused with the illusory axe and began to emit an even greater presence. Mysteries of war, destruction. Tai Ta bellowed. He swung his axe toward Ouyang Yangwen's streak of light with a dazzling, golden light. The power of the attack had far exceeded Tai Ta's personal strength. Even mid-returnance experts needed to face the attack seriously. Boom! The collision of the 2 attacks immediately erupted with a great boom. Terrifying ripples of energy swept through the surroundings as a storm of energy, causing all the space around the attacks to tremble and distort. The entire continent was affected. Having already been split into 4 pieces, a great region of the continent collapsed, immediately causing a supersized earthquake to form across the entire continent. Several cities collapsed 1,000,000 kilometers away. However, Ouyang Yangwen's attack had not been dispersed by Tai Ta's attack. A small sliver of it lingered, now only 3 meters long. It shot toward Tai Ta with a resplendent glow. Tai Ta's eyes narrowed. Faced with an attack at such a close range, it was too late for him to fight back. He immediately blocked it with his golden axe. With a boom, Tai Ta was blown away by a powerful shockwave of energy. Before he stabilized himself while flying back, a dazzling golden light immediately appeared on his left hand. He punched out toward Ouyang Yangwen in the distance and cried out, "Mysteries of war, void devastating hell punch." Chapter 1544, Onslaught, 2, Tai Ta's punch did not possess any devastating might or powerful pulses of energy. It did not even cause any ripples in space. It seemed like a simple punch from an ordinary person. However, Ouyang Yangwen's eyes narrowed at that moment. Without any hesitation, he immediately shot back. The moment he retreated, the space where he had been standing silently collapsed, descending into darkness. Vaguely, a terrifying energy wreaked havoc there. It was invisible to the naked eye and seemed to be a part of space. Even the senses of the soul would struggle to discover its existence. It would only become obvious when it erupted. However, Tai Ta's attack seemed to have locked onto Ouyang Yangwen's presence. The energy that seemed to be a part of space chased after him in a hurry, causing the space wherever it passed to collapse. A cold gleam of light flashed through Ouyang Yangwen's eyes. There was a sliver of anger. He could sense that Tai Ta's true strength had not reached returnance yet. Just the thought of him, the greatest elder from the sacred spirit hall, being forced to dodge an attack from someone who was not even at returnance was unforgivable. Ouyang Yangwen suddenly slashed out. With his attack, the domain of his sword immediately expanded. It engulfed a radius of 300 meters, turning that area into a separate region. The space in that region gently trembled and began to collapse. The entire area was reduced to darkness. The strange energy from Tai Ta, which seemed to have fused with the space, dispersed as well. At the same time, Ouyang Yangwen continued without stopping at all. He seemed to have become a figure of light as he shot toward Tai Ta with lightning-like speed and soaring sword qi. He passed through Tai Ta's chest in a single moment, penetrating his body. Spurt. Tai Ta vomited a mouthful of golden blood. An extremely small wound had appeared on his chest as droplets of golden blood oozed out as well. Ouyang Yangwen's attack was extremely terrifying. Not only had he pierced Tai Ta's body with his sword, but his entire body had also passed through Tai Ta's body in the form of light, just like the sword in his hand. However, only a wound of 3 fingers long remained on Tai Ta. Tai Ta became extremely pale. His face was haggard. He tottered in the air before falling out of the sky. Ouyang Yangwen did not even glance at Tai Ta. With a wave of his sword, he produced a powerful sword chi that shot toward Xiao Jin. The sword chi struck Xiao Jin in the waist, cleaving him in two. Blood scattered through the air. Xiao Jin cried out painfully as the 2 halves of his body fell out of the sky at the same time. Golden blood spurted out constantly, appearing like rain. Jian Shen witnessed everything from outer space. He saw a strand of sword chi pierce through his sister's chest. He saw how Ouyang Yangwen used a secret technique to pass through Tai Ta like a beam of light, giving him unbelievable injuries, and he also saw Xiao Jin cut in half by a single stroke. Jian Shen became filled with rage with everything that had happened. He burned with anger and killing intent surged within him. Jian Shen angrily roared out and abandoned his opponent. The azulate swords hovered to his left and right as Jian Shen seemed to become a blinding divine sword himself. He let out a radiant glow as he charged toward Ouyang Yangwen. Worried about Jian Shen's safety, the white tiger also abandoned its opponent. It produced a deafening roar as it charged toward Ouyang Yangwen as well. The 2 mid-returnance experts did not try to stop them. Instead, they sneered as they watched Jian Shen and the white tiger leave. Was there anything that could not be dealt with if their elder Ouyang acted personally? The 2 of them even began to imagine Jian Shen and the white tiger's outcomes. A cold light appeared in Ouyang Yangwen's eyes when he saw Jian Shen. Of all the Origin Realm experts from the Tian Yuan continent, Jian Shen was the only one he hated because Jian Shen was the one who had used the disc to trap him, turning him into a joke and embarrassing him. In the end, he even had to be saved by Xiong Zhong, making him owe a favor to someone he had never gotten along with. Although Xiong Zhong and him had never held debts of blood, they had always been rivals. They had constantly gotten into various scuffles in the past. They were basically water and fire. Yet now, he actually owed Xiong Zhong a favor. That was not something Ouyang Yangwen could accept. I heard from Xiong Zhong that you're Jian Shen. You've also comprehended the way of the sword like the Spirit King. I originally planned on dealing with you last, but since you've come looking for your death, I'll grant your wish and send you on your way prematurely. Ouyang Yangwen's voice was very gentle, but it was icy cold, like facing against a viper. He felt true killing intent for Jian Shen. It had been countless years since killing intent like that had appeared in him. A sudden jolt of his sword produced a clang. The tip of Ouyang Yangwen's sword shook, and with a clear thrum, it shot into the sky as a streak of light. Jian Shen used a sword technique. The twin swords became several hundred meters long as their dazzling light melded together. They violently collided with Ouyang Yangwen's sword in an unstoppable fashion. Boom! A great rumble reverberated from the collision, becoming the only sound in the surroundings. The cries and sounds of battle were completely drowned out while the heads of a few Saint Emperors rang. Their ears bled. The twin swords rebounded and Jian Shen charged up to them. He caught the Ziying sword with one hand and protected himself with the light from the way of the sword. His body seemed to shine like a sun as he tore through the violent shockwaves of energy. He engaged in a great battle against Ouyang Yangwen. The 2 of them began fighting in the dark region where space had already shattered. From outside, only the flickering of light was visible. Fragments of sword chi shot in all directions like rain. Even though the 2 of them were inside a crack of space, the crack was unable to harm them at all. In fact, it did not even affect them. After a short while, the 2 of them had clashed several dozen times. Their fight was devastating, enough to dim the sun and kick up tsunamis. In the end, the 2 of them brushed past each other and came to a temporary halt. Droplets of blood had been flicked into the air. Each droplet was filled with powerful pulses of energy. Jian Shen was covered in blood. He had gained a few terrifying sword slashes on his body. One of them had passed through his chest completely while his right hand had turned into a bloody mess. Opposite him, many parts of Ouyang Yangwen's robes were ripped. His luxurious, white robes possessed specks of blood as well, except they did not originate from him but Jian Chen. Jian Chen, you really do have some skill. No wonder Xiongzhong was defeated by you. It'd probably take me some effort to kill you if you were in peak condition, but killing you is a piece of a cake now that you're heavily injured, Ouyang Yangwen sneered. A heavy killing intent leaked out of his body. He did not even try to contain it. Chapter 1545. Driven to the end of the road, Jian Chen remained silent. He glared at Ouyang Yangwen and felt very heavy inside. He knew that Ouyang Yangwen was right. With his current injuries, it would not be difficult for Ouyang Yangwen to kill him. When he clashed with Ouyang Yangwen earlier, he was already using his full strength, hiding nothing at all while Ouyang Yangwen was just probing him. If Ouyang Yangwen had used his full strength in the battle before, Jian Chen would probably not still be standing. Ouyang Yangwen was just far too strong. Compared to Xiongzhong, he was not just slightly stronger. At this moment, a deafening roar materialized. The white tiger had shrunk and become 3 meters long. Its snow-white wings were completely unfurled. Some inscriptions flickered on them. Each line of inscription hid mysterious and great power, while the powerful force of slaughter covered its claws. The white tiger swung them at Ouyang Yangwen with a devastating might. The moment the white tiger attacked, Jian Chen moved as well. Even though he was extremely injured, his presence had not weakened at all. His face was cold as he charged toward Ouyang Yangwen like a powerful sword. He knew that the white tiger was not Ouyang Yangwen's opponent, so he needed to provide support. Ouyang Yangwen remained composed while facing the pincer attack from Jian Chen and the white tiger. He said in surprise, "I never thought that there'd be 2 experts who've comprehended laws in this world. It's just a pity that your true strengths are just too low even though you've comprehended laws. If you had reached returnance, tiger, even just early returnance, I would not be your opponent. Even some experts who've reached reciprocity won't be able to stand up to you, but it's a pity that you're at early receival." Ouyang Yangwen shook his head in pity. He looked at the white tiger in shame. Comprehending laws at early reciprocity revealed a talent that was extremely terrifying. At least in the world of Forsaken Saints, there had been countless reciprocity experts who had appeared throughout history. Quite a few had reached the peak of reciprocity. Yet, the only one who had managed to comprehend any laws was the current Spirit King. However, Ouyang Yangwen needed to kill prodigies with such great talent. They had become enemies already, so if he did not eliminate them now and they managed to mature successfully in the future, they would become a threat. Ouyang Yangwen turned around and slashed out with lightning-like speed. His sword radiated with powerful killing intent. It darted out with a silver flash, moving toward the white tiger's claws. There was the screeching of metal when the sword came in contact with the tiger's claws. When the force of slaughter on the claws came in contact with the sword, it rapidly vanished. It was the power of laws, but the difference in strength was just far too great. It was difficult for the power to pose any threats. In the blink of an eye, the white tiger's force of slaughter was dispersed by Ouyang Yangwen. With a jolt, his sword immediately surged out with more sword chi, landing on the white tiger's claws. Clang! The white tiger's claws were extremely tough. When the sword chi struck the claws, it failed to cut through them. Instead, it created sparks, causing residual sword chi to shoot off in all directions. The white tiger's body was not as tough as its claws. Its paws immediately became bloodied when the residual sword chi reached the center of its paws. Every strand of sword chi would punch a hole through its paws. Some of the sword chi had even reached its body, immediately disappearing into the tiger. The white tiger shook and growled painfully. Its wings suddenly began to glow brighter at that moment. Countless inscriptions flickered and flashed, radiating powerful pulses of energy. Under the light, the wings seemed to join together and sharpen, becoming something similar to curved blades. They let out a dazzling light and appeared like the sun. Strands of a profound formation revolved around the wings, and with a flip from the white tiger, the blade formed from the wings immediately shot toward Ouyang Yangwen with a terrifying force. A mysterious power immediately expanded, trapping Ouyang Yangwen where he was. Ouyang Yangwen's eyes narrowed. A smear of shock appeared on his face. Not only did he discover that he had been trapped by a mysterious power, but his comprehension of the mysteries of space, along with his connection to the energy of the world, seemed to have all vanished the moment the blade shot toward him. He could not sense the energy of the world at all. He had even lost control over spatial force. It had been forcefully severed away from him. What ability did this tiger use? It's so powerful. Is there anyone who can resist it if it's used against experts of the same level? Ouyang Yangwen became stern. The gaze he used on the white tiger became filled with heavy killing intent at that moment as well. The more extraordinary the white tiger was, the more he needed to kill it, or he would not be its opponent once it grew some more. With a tremor of his body, his power at late returnance leaked out without any restraint. It immediately allowed him to break free of the mysterious power, allowing him to use his sword to receive the attack. Boom! The white tiger was completely blown away. Its fused wings separated once again and the white light rapidly vanished. Its wing dulled and all the inscriptions vanished. As the white tiger shot back, constantly vomiting blood, it became haggard and was filled with weakness. Ouyang Yangwen's body shook a few times as well. He took one step back uncontrollably before stabbing out with his sword in a reverse grip, forcing Jian Chen away. Soon after that, he stabbed out a second time. His sword collided with the Ziying sword and immediately knocked it away. With that, Ouyang Yangwen followed up with another stab. This time he stabbed at Jian Chen's forehead in an attempt to kill him off. A gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. In that crucial moment, the Qing Suo sword flew over and blocked the attack targeting his forehead, allowing Jian Chen to rapidly retreat. Jian Chen, today will be the day you die. You will be the first expert I kill from this world. Once I end your life, I'll end the white tiger's life, Ouyang Yangwen said with a feminine tone. He stepped through the empty air and pursued Jian Chen. A sliver of sorrow appeared in Jian Chen's eyes. He glanced at the Tianyuan continent below. They were suffering in utter defeat. Tai Ta, Changyang Mingyue, Shao Jin, and Houston were all heavily injured. Yang Lai, Gui Haidao and Feng Xiaotian had vanished from the battlefield. The returnance expert, who had originally been fighting against Tai Ta, had left the battle the moment Tai Ta was heavily injured. He went to deal with Shangguan Mu'er. She was also heavily injured and covered in blood. Aside from Xiao Ling who was fighting Gongxi Ming in outer space, all the other Origin Realm experts of the Tianyuan continent had been heavily injured. Have we truly been driven to the end of the road just like this? Jian Chen sorrowfully murmured. His homeland was behind him. If he could not stop them on the front lines, his parents, his relatives, his good friends, and all the people he knew would probably die. No, there's still a way, a chance to save the Tianyuan continent. I still have my final trump card and can turn the situation around. Even if I die, I will make the world of Forsaken Saints pay a heavy price. Even though the outcome will remain the same with the existence of the Spirit King. I will at least earn some time for the Tianyuan continent. Determination flooded Jian Chen's eyes. With a thought, the azulate swords flew over and hovered above his head. They glowed with a blinding light. Chapter 1546, How dare you just scare me? Jian Chen ran out of choices now that he had been driven to the end of the road. He could only fuse the azulate swords and erupt with devastating power. He would dish out a dazzling attack and turn the situation around. If he did not do that, then the Tianyuan continent would be doomed on this very day. Not only would he die, his parents, his relatives in the Changyang clan, Bai Lian, and the others in Flame City would probably all go down with him. He would probably end up in the same situation as the old master of the azulate swords after fusing them. He would not be able to withstand the great backlash and would die. However, dying like this would at least give him the power to kill Ouyang Yangwen, so at least Ouyang Yangwen would fall before him. He might even be able to kill all the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints currently on the Tian Yuan continent and make the foreign world suffer heavy casualties, giving the Tian Yuan continent some more time. Master, don't use the fusion of the twin swords. With your current strength, you won't be able to endure the backlash at all. It'll mean certain death. Master, stop. You still have the Inata Tower. You can hide in it and enter the chaotic streams of space. It'll allow you to survive. Master, you can't use the fusion of the swords. Your future potential is unlimited. You can't die here. Sensing Jian Chen's intentions, the sword spirits immediately cried out in objection. Both of them were extremely worried. They were indestructible, so the fusion of the twin swords was unable to kill them. It would only return them to their weakest form, but Jian Chen would definitely die because the backlash was deadly. When the Azulite swords were ranked among the 10 great god artifacts from the Immortals world, even one of the grand exalts of the Immortals world was unable to withstand the backlash. Even though the swords were only immortal artifacts now, nowhere near god artifacts, the backlash was still not something Jian Chen could withstand right now. They did not wish to witness Jian Chen die because they had seen a glimmer of Jian Chen's future. If Jian Chen matured successfully, he would definitely attain unbelievable heights in the future. Yet, Jian Chen had stopped worrying about his fate. He could indeed survive using the method that Azulite swords had told him to use, but he would never abandon his close friends and family just to survive by himself. The Azulite swords had turned into 2 gigantic swords that hung above Jian Chen's head. They were pointed at the sky and let out dazzling violet and azure lights, dyeing the entire region those 2 colors. At that moment, the swords completely outshone the sun, becoming the only colors in the surroundings. They illuminated the entire continent, turning everything violet and azure. At the same time, an extremely terrifying pulse of energy appeared. The pulse was so great that it made all the space around them tremble. It seemed to possess the power to cleave the sky and earth in half. It made the entire world tremble in fear. The moment that the terrifying pulse appeared, the intense battle on the Tian Yuan continent immediately came to a halt. Everyone stared at the sky, which was dominated by azure and violet, in shock. The pulse had made all of them tremble from the depths of their souls, as if the end of the world had arrived. Xiaoling and Gongxi Ming could not help but stop fighting. They stared at Jian Chen in shock while Ouyang Yangwen's handsome, feminine face also drastically changed. He became extremely stern, and in the depths of his eyes, there was a smear of fear. He was the target that Jian Chen wanted to kill first, so the fear he felt was the most intense. The terrifying pulse gave him the feeling of death. The twin swords had not fused yet. Right now, they were in the process of fusing, and a complete fusion required some time to charge up. However, even though that was the case, the pulse that had erupted was enough to cause people to tremble in fear. Primordial chaos was divided into yin and yang. This yin and yang originated from chaotic force. The sword spirits were born from yin and yang, so if they fused, it would be a fusion of yin and yang, descending back into chaos. This chaos was true chaos. It was the most powerful force in existence and belonged to the birth of the universe. It could not be compared to Jian Chen's impure chaotic force. The Ziying sword and Qing Suo sword gradually drew together. Slivers of supreme yin force and supreme yang force leaked out, coming into contact with one another from time to time. They would immediately erupt with devastating ripples of energy. The power from the 2 swords became greater and greater as they fused. They ate away space, turning the region where Jian Chen stood into darkness. The space around him had shattered and collapsed. It would not close up for quite some time. Jian Chen gritted his teeth as veins bulged on his forehead. His entire body shook violently. In the past, he had attempted a fusion before, except that was only the fusion between 2 strands of sword qi, which had cost him his saint weapon, the light wind sword. He had also suffered extremely severe injuries when he did that. The fusion process was extremely easy since Jian Chen had experienced it before. The process should be the same as before, but when he attempted the second fusion, now involving swords, he discovered that it was an easy feat to fuse two immortal artifacts. The closer they got to one another, the more they would resist each other. The resistance would increase several-fold whenever he forced the swords closer, so it was an extremely difficult process. After all, the current twin swords were no longer the sword spirits that did not possess a physical form. Despite all that, Jian Chen's teeth remained clenched. Determination flooded his eyes. He had to fuse the swords and kill Ouyang Yangwen. The Ziying sword and Qing Suo sword both loudly thrummed, as if they were shrieking out in pain. As the swords drew closer and closer to one another, tiny cracks appeared on the swords as well. They spread in all directions, causing more and more cracks appeared. The power of the fusion was just too great. Even though the sword spirits had not recovered all their strength yet, the power from the fusion was still not something immortal artifacts could withstand. Ouyang Yangwen was not composed. He stared at Jian Chen with an ugly expression. He could clearly feel that death was rapidly drawing closer to him, frightening him. However, when he wanted to stop Jian Chen, he discovered, in shock, that he was unable to get anywhere close to Jian Chen. The pressure surrounding Jian Chen was just too powerful. It had annihilated space and also stopped anyone from getting close to him. Run! At this moment, a thought that Ouyang Yangwen had never even considered flooded his head, and that was to run. At that moment, he could no longer bother with his public image and dignity. He felt dread from the terrifying pulse. When his life was under severe threat, he would abandon his dignity without any hesitation. He no longer cared how people looked at him. He immediately turned around to run. Seeing how their elder Ouyang panicked, the other Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints were frightened to the point that they no longer dared to remain any longer. They stared at the terrifying pulses in the sky in dread as they abandoned their opponents, flying toward the tunnel as quickly as they could. However, when they arrived at the tunnel and were about to dive into it, the terrifying pressure in the sky suddenly vanished. The radiant azure and violet colors disappeared as well. The world returned to how it had looked earlier. In outer space, Jian Chen was sheet white. Blood spilled from his mouth, turning into a mist. The fusion of the twin swords had failed. All the Origin Realm experts, who were about to enter the tunnel, stopped due to the sudden change. They stared at the sky in doubt. When they saw Jian Chen's conditions, they were all stunned. Ouyang Yangwen was also stunned, but he returned to his senses. His face immediately darkened. He clenched his fist tight. Veins bulged on his arm as he roared out, "How dare you scare me!" Chapter 1547. The Divine Hall emerges. Whether it was Ouyang Yangwen or the other Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints, they were all monsters who had lived for several dozen millennia. They were knowledgeable, experienced, and possessed extraordinary insight. As soon as they saw what had happened to Jian Chen, they knew that Jian Chen's devastating attack had failed, perhaps due to a lack of strength. All the Origin Realm experts from the other world let out a sigh of relief. After all, the pressure was just far too great. It made them feel like an apocalypse was looming over their heads, frightening them all. They were very lucky that Jian Chen did not possess enough power to use this attack that they all feared. They were not certain that they could make it back to the foreign world if he had attacked. Ouyang Yangwen was completely enraged. He was someone who dearly cared about his public image, yet he had been embarrassed time and time again after arriving in this world. First, he had been trapped and immobilized by the treasure from his own world, forcing him to be taken back to the world of Forsaken Saints so that the Spirit King could personally remove the disc from him. And now, he had actually been scared into running away by the powerful presence of an ability that exceeded Jian Chen's strength, almost running all the way back to the world of Forsaken Saints. With his intelligence, he only needed to think about things calmly and would have discerned that it was impossible for Jian Chen to use such a powerful attack with his strength and injuries. Ouyang Yangwen had already seen that Jian Chen's true strength was not in the Origin Realm. He knew that it still remained at Saint Emperor. The reason why he possessed the power to fight late returnance experts was all because of the way of the sword and his 2 powerful swords. In addition to his powerful body and unbelievable recovery rate, he was able to put up a fight with experts in higher realms. The more powerful the technique, the greater the demand on the caster's strength. Thinking about it again, even if Jian Qin could use an extremely high-level technique with his strength, the power would definitely not be enough to threaten him, much less make him feel like he was facing death. Ouyang Yangwen could not help but feel his face heat up. This was just far too shameful. He almost felt the impulse to just hide somewhere and no longer see anyone ever again. He no longer had the dignity to face the other elders and protectors. Although they had all fled as well, he was the Grand Elder, the most powerful beneath the Spirit King. In his eyes, how could the other elders compare to him? Yet, they had all clearly witnessed that the one who had fled first had been him. Jian Qin, I will skin you alive. Ouyang Yangwen gnashed his teeth. His eyes burned with furious anger. A terrifying killing intent radiated from his body. It was extremely powerful. He had suffered twice due to Jian Qin, embarrassing himself twice. If Jian Qin had been an expert who had completely exceeded him in strength, he would have never become so furious. Yet, Jian Qin had not even reached the origin realm. With a tremor, the sword in Ouyang Yangwen's hand thrummed as he charged toward Jian Qin. Jian Qin was sheet white and covered in blood. He was still in outer space. His flesh had cracked open and web-like cracks crisscrossed across his body. Even though the fusion of the twin swords had failed, both him and the Azulite swords suffered an extremely severe backlash. The current Azulite swords were covered with cracks. They were dim as well, having lost their resplendent light from before. Jian Qin's chaotic body was heavily injured and covered in cracks. It was a vicious sight. Even his soul was heavily injured, making his head throb. He felt haggard and extremely weak. Jian Qin had truly injured the very core of his body. Even the chaotic body was unable to withstand the wounds. His battle prowess had drastically decreased. He would struggle to deal with receival experts, let alone a returnance expert. However, at this very moment, a region of space several 100,000 meters long suddenly collapsed above Mercenary City. It shattered, just like a mirror, and descended into darkness. An extremely powerful energy pulsed within the darkness. It spread across the entire sky. A huge shadow slowly emerged from the shattered space. It hovered above everyone like a huge blanket, blocking out the sun and causing the world to darken. It was a gigantic divine hall. It seemed just like a palace, beautifully decorated. White jade was used for the stairs, making it luxurious yet not any less dignified. It passed through the destroyed space as a tremendous pressure spread to the surroundings. When the divine hall completely emerged, it let out with a dazzling azure light, which enveloped the entire structure. It became obscured from view and seemed mysterious. Unknowingly, it seemed a little more otherworldly. Countless rare, unique beasts appeared in the azure light. They danced around the divine hall and let out various cries. There were divine dragons and phoenixes, beasts that flew and beasts that ran. There were several hundred different types of beasts, and a lot of them did not even appear on the Tianyuan continent. In fact, even the protectors and elders from the world of Forsaken Saints did not recognize more than half of them. With the addition of the unique beasts, the divine hall seemed even more extraordinary. It seemed like an immortal's palace from heaven. At this moment, a huge formation hovered out of the divine hall. As it revolved, it immediately exploded with azure light. Like scattered flowers, countless streams of azure light swept across the world, rapidly extending toward the foreign expert. The streams trapped all the Saint Emperors and surrounded a few Origin Realm experts. The azure streams moved far too quickly, almost the speed of light. The Origin Realm experts watched the streams approach them, but since they moved too fast, they were unable to react in time. All of them were tied up. Even Ouyang Yangwen failed to escape in the end. He too was tied up by several streams of light. The entire world sank into an odd silence at that moment, falling quiet in a single moment. Everyone stared at the huge divine hall in the sky and felt dazed. What divine hall was this? It possessed such power that it could tie up all the people from the foreign world in such a short moment. Ouyang Yangwen's eyes suddenly narrowed. He stared at the divine hall that was enveloped in azure light and had beasts revolving around it. Shock filled his eyes as he thought, how can this world possess such a powerful divine hall? Its attacks approach the speed of light, so how can anyone dodge it? Shortly after he questioned the hall, Ouyang Yangwen sensed the power of the azure streams around him. A gleam of light immediately flashed through his eyes, and with a slight tremble, the streams around him turned to shreds. Ouyang Yangwen stared at the azure light that gradually disappeared into the surroundings. He involuntarily broke into laughter, so it's just like this. It has incomparable speed, but it's far weak. It can only keep Saint Emperors trapped. Stunned by that, the other Origin Realm experts used some of the Origin energy within their bodies and escaped. To no one's surprise, the azure streams which trapped them possessed incredible speed, but they were very weak. They were useless against Origin Realm experts. Everyone come here immediately. Pour your power into the Divine Hall. I am unable to make the Divine Hall exhibit its true power on my own. A vigorous voice yelled from the huge Divine Hall. It was very stern. It's Tianjian. It's Tianjian's voice. Is this the Supreme Divine Hall from Mercenary City? Just how powerful is this Divine Hall? Even with Tianjian's powers as a Saint Emperor, he is unable to exhibit the Divine Hall's full power. Everyone on the side of the Tianyuan continent was taken aback when they heard Tianjian's voice. Some cries rang out and some people charged toward the Divine Hall despite their injuries. With others in the lead, no one else hesitated. It did not matter if they were injured or not. No matter how heavily injured they were, they all charged toward the Divine Hall as fast as they could in that moment. They wanted to pour whatever power they had left into the Divine Hall so that the Divine Hall could become even more powerful. Although the receival and returnance experts from the world of Forsaken Saints were still present, all the people from the Tianyuan continent were filled with confidence after witnessing its extraordinary appearance. The Divine Hall was accompanied by hundreds of beasts. Throughout history, countless divine halls had appeared, but none of them had ever exhibited something like this. At the same time, more than half of the beasts had never appeared on the Tianyuan continent, clearly not organisms of this world. The divine hall had been left behind by Mo Tianyun. Many people believed Mo Tianyun's strength belonged to the Origin Realm, but this was only a guess. No one knew what Mo Tianyun's true strength was. After all, there were only 4 experts in the ancient times. At the same time, Mo Tianyun had only ever fought against Ergens, the war god of the 100 races, and had emerged victorious in that battle. He had repelled the war god. There was also the fact that only Saint Emperors could refine the Supreme Divine Hall and that it took Tianjian such a long amount of time. This demonstrated how extraordinary the Divine Hall was. Being a Saint Emperor had only fulfilled the minimum condition of refining the Divine Hall. Chapter 1548, Might of the Divine Hall. All the human experts on the Tianyuan continent, regardless of whether or not they were Saint Emperors, Saint Kings, or Saint Rulers, all surged into the sky, headed toward the Divine Hall. They all understood that the power of the world of Forsaken Saints could not be stopped by the Tianyuan continent as things stood. They had entered a hopeless situation, yet now that the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City had appeared, the great disturbance it caused immediately gave them all some hope. They could only depend on the Supreme Divine Hall now. At the same time, the remaining experts from the magical beasts, the 100 races, and the sea race did not fall behind either. They also took to the sky and flew toward the Supreme Divine Hall as quickly as possible. Along the way, all of them secretly gathered their strength. They would pour it all into the Divine Hall without any hesitation once they were close enough, helping the Divine Hall exhibit its true power. Tianjian had said this in the language of the Tian Yuan continent. Since the experts of the three other races had spent quite some time of the continent prior to the battle, they had already grasped the language, but the experts from the foreign world had no idea what Tianjian had just said. They relied on their souls to communicate with the people of this world, which allowed them to overcome the language barriers between the two worlds. When the Origin Realm experts discovered the four races flying toward the Divine Hall, they thought they were trying to seek refuge and avoid the calamity that was about to happen. They sneered while their eyes became filled with disdain. The Divine Hall had caused a great disturbance when it had appeared, but they had witnessed its power earlier. Even though it was extraordinary, it was only able to pose a threat to Saint Emperors. It was basically nothing to Origin Realm experts since they could destroy the attacks with a wave of their hand. As a result, they did not obstruct the people of the four races from approaching the Divine Hall. Instead, they hovered and watched everything unfold like it was a joke. In just a few short seconds, all the people from the armies of the four races disappeared into the azure light of the Supreme Divine Hall. Afterward, under Tianjian's orders, they all arrived near the Divine Hall and pressed their hands against it. They poured all the power that was in their bodies into the Divine Hall, channeling it through their hands. Immediately, the Divine Hall glowed even brighter. The light flooded the surroundings and filled the sky. The unique beasts conjured from the azure light seemed to consolidate even more. They seemed to be alive. They revolved around the Divine Hall, releasing various cries and calls. The Divine Hall's power immediately increased with the power from those people. More azure streams of light appeared around the Divine Hall. They shot toward the Origin Realm experts once again at an unbelievable speed. The azure streams moved at the speed of light. They were so fast that even Ouyang Yangwen, who had reached late returnance, was unable to dodge them. They arrived right in front of him in a single moment and tied him up like a hostage. This time, the power exhibited by the Divine Hall was far greater than when Tianjian had controlled it all by himself. It had gained the help of various experts. As a result, the streams of azure light were more powerful than before. The receival experts from the foreign world shook their bodies, but they failed to break free this time. Only the elders of the Sacred Spirit Hall managed to shake off the bonds as easily as before. The streams were still unable to trap them, but they could clearly feel that the streams of light were much more powerful than before. When the trapped receival experts sensed the toughness of the streams, their faces all changed. The Divine Hall's power had significantly increased with the addition of the sainthood experts of this world. It now possessed the power to trap receival experts, which was definitely bad news for them. Suddenly, a few receival experts yelled out while the origin energy within them surged out. They used their full strength to break free from the restraints of the azure streams. However, they still failed to shake off the bonds. The powerful origin energy only managed to loosen the streams by an inch. They were unable to shake them to pieces. There was even an expert who used his sword to slash at the streams when the bonds loosened. The azure light immediately shook, but it quickly stabilized itself once again. The strike failed to sever the azure streams. A cold light immediately flashed through Ouyang Yangwen's eyes. He glared at the obscured Divine Hall in the sky and coldly said, "You may have gained the support of a few sainthood experts, allowing the structure to become strong enough to trap receival experts, but it's still not enough to deal with returnance experts. Watch as I smash this Divine Hall." Ouyang Yangwen wielded his sword with his right hand. He fused with it, letting out a resplendent light, which tore through the azure light. He shot into the light with an unstoppable force, colliding with the Divine Hall. Boom! A deafening sound immediately reverberated away with the collision. Terrifying shockwaves wreaked havoc in the surroundings, causing large regions of space to collapse. However, Ouyang Yangwen's face suddenly changed when his sword struck the Divine Hall. Disbelief filled his eyes. He felt like the structure before him was an indestructible fortress. Not only had the structure failed to crumble as he had imagined, but he failed to even leave a mark on the Divine Hall. It did not even shake. His strength at returnance was unable to do anything to this unimpressive Divine Hall. Shortly afterward, a great recoil force appeared, shaking Ouyang Yangwen's entire right arm until it became numb. His entire body was blown back as well. The Supreme Divine Hall remained where it was, unscathed and still obscured by a dense azure light. It radiated with a tremendous pressure. Ouyang Yangwen became stunned by what had just happened. He stared at the Divine Hall in disbelief as his heart churned. Just what kind of Divine Hall was this? It was so tough that he was unable to damage it at all even with his strength. He had lived for several dozen millennia. He had seen and heard a lot of things in the world. Aside from the Sacred Spirit Hall, he knew of no other Divine Hall that could match up to the one before his eyes right now. The other elders and protectors also became stunned. Their faces were filled with disbelief. With Elder Ouyang's strength, he could not even damage this Divine Hall at all. Just how powerful was this Divine Hall? This Divine Hall is powerful, but it's only a treasure. Treasures require an endless source of energy to continuously exhibit its powers, and the more powerful the treasure, the greater the consumption of energy. Since this Divine Hall is extraordinary, maintaining it is no easy feat. No wonder all those sainthood experts entered the Divine Hall earlier. I'd like to see just how long you all can last. Ouyang Yangwen understood everything very soon and immediately sneered. Chapter 1548, Driven Back, 1. The Divine Hall should be their final line of defense. It's so tough that I am unable to destroy it, but it's impossible for them to maintain it for very long with their strength. If we attack the Divine Hall without stopping and waste away their power, they won't be able to maintain it for long. I'd like to see what trump card they'll play. They lose the Divine Hall, said Ouyang Yangwen while sneering. He glanced at the returnance experts below him and said, Elders, let's attack this Divine Hall. We might end up gaining a Divine Hall that might be on par with our Sacred Spirit Hall. Ouyang Yangwen became excited. The power of the Divine Hall before them interested all of them. They all shifted their focus onto the structure, no longer paying any attention to the other Origin Realm experts from the Tian Yuan continent. In the eyes of the elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints, there were some experts with shocking strength from the Tian Yuan continent, but whatever threat they posed could be handled by their elder Ouyang. Moreover, their world possessed an even more terrifying Spirit King aside from Elder Ouyang. If they obtained such a powerful Divine Hall and brought it back to the world of Forsaken Saints, it would be a deed of great merit even if they could not use it. Bringing back the Divine Hall would be countless times greater than contributing to the invasion of the other world. The other returnance elders did not object Ouyang Yangwen's command. They all attacked together, striking the Divine Hall as hard as they could. Booms immediately began to reverberate through the sky as terrifying pulses of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings. The pulses raised great gales, which kicked up the sand and dust on the ground, causing the sky to become gray and hazy. Large portions of the cracked continent collapsed from the barrage of shockwaves. They turned into bottomless chasms. They made it seem like the world was ending, facing destruction. Ouyang Yangwen sent several dozen sword chi toward the receival experts who were trapped in the azure streams of light, helping them break free. After regaining their mobility, the receival experts all joined the attack on the Divine Hall without any hesitation at all. Are you okay, big brother? You're bleeding so much. Big brother, let's go into Master's Divine Hall. Xiaoling stared at the bloody Jian Chen with tears in her eyes while choking back her sobs. With a wave of her hand, a ball of origin energy enveloped his body and pulled him toward the Supreme Divine Hall below as quickly as possible. Of all the Origin Realm experts who stood on the side of the Tian Yuan continent, Xiaoling was the only one who had not been injured. Neither side was injured when she was battling Gongxi Ming. At the same time, Changyang Mingyue raised her head to look at the Divine Hall, which flickered with azure light. After hesitating, she also turned into a blur and shot into the Divine Hall. Tai Ta also rose up from the ground. He glowed with a layer of golden light, but it was extremely dim compared to before. He was pale and haggard as he weakly flew over to the Divine Hall. Xiao Jin flew up from the ground as well. He had been cleaved in two by Ouyang Yangwen, but his body had reformed. He was a spirit of metal. His body was condensed from a golden liquid, so rejoining his body was not difficult. The Empyrean demon orb hovered above Houston's head as it dragged his injured body toward the Supreme Divine Hall. When Ouyang Yangwen saw the Origin Realm experts from the Tian Yuan continent fly toward the Supreme Divine Hall, he frowned and yelled, "The Divine Hall has become so powerful because of the addition of all those people at sainthood. If a few Origin Realm experts join in as well, who knows how powerful the Divine Hall will become? Stop them. We can't let them enter the Divine Hall." A few Returnance elders from the world of Forsaken Saints immediately moved to stop Jian Chen from entering the Divine Hall. However, more streams of light shot toward them at an unbelievable speed. At the same time, the streams of light trapping the foreign saint emperors were withdrawn. After gathering some power, they turned into a stream that was even more powerful, which targeted Ouyang Yangwen. The elders of the foreign world were helpless against the azure streams of light. The streams were unable to pose a threat to them, but they did move very fast, exceeding a speed they could react to, so they were unable to dodge them. Whenever the streams of azure light shot toward them, they would end up trapped. At the same time, Changyang Mingyue entered the Divine Hall. Gaining the assistance of an early Returnance expert, the streams of light became even more powerful. This time, the elders of the foreign world required more strength to break free from the bonds created by the streams. Ouyang Yangwen immediately failed to break free since the stream of light trapping him was the most powerful. With the delay, Jian Chen, Shaoling, Tai Ta, Xiao Jin, and Houston all managed to enter the Divine Hall, disappearing before the Origin Realm experts of the foreign world. Ouyang Yangwen's face became terrifying. He stared at the vaguely visible Divine Hall and gritted his teeth. Even if you've gained the support of several Origin Realm experts, they're all injured. It's impossible for you all to recover without taking a few months or years. I'd like to see just how long this Divine Hall can last. Not only will I flatten your world, I'll take your Divine Hall as well. Ouyang Yangwen and the other Origin Realm experts all attacked the Divine Hall as best they could. At the same time, Ouyang Yangwen ordered the Saint Emperors below, all Saint Emperors disperse and slaughter all fighters of this world. Remember, do not kill more than 1,000,000 people each, in case of celestial decay. The Saint Emperor's eyes glowed with a bloodthirsty light. They immediately scattered in all directions. Tianjian's face immediately changed in the Supreme Divine Hall. Without any hesitation, he immediately controlled the power of the Divine Hall and sent streams of azure light toward the scattering Saint Emperors, immobilizing them all to prevent endless massacres across the world. Ouyang Yangwen could not help but laugh out loud. This was just what he had anticipated. He did not care whether the low-level fighters of the world died or not. His true intentions were to drain the Divine Hall's energy faster. Chapter 1550, Driven Back, 2, Tianjian sat on a seat made of white jade while he controlled the Divine Hall. Jian Chen, Shaoling, Xiao Jin, Houston, Tai Ta, Changyang Mingyue, and Shengyan Mu'er gathered around him. They continuously poured their powers into the seat so that the Divine Hall could erupt with even great power to fend off the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. With the support of several Origin Realm experts, the power of the Divine Hall immediately skyrocketed. The azure streams of light it conjured were enough to trap the receival experts of the foreign world. They could not resist the streams at all. Even the Returnance experts were trapped. The two sides were locked in a stalemate for the time being. To everyone's disappointment, the Divine Hall specialized in defense. It possessed offensive formations, but their power was pitiful compared to its defenses. The offensive formations were nowhere near strong enough to kill Origin Realm experts. The expenditure of the Divine Hall is just too great. Coupled with the lack of Origin energy in this world, once I use up all of my Origin energy, it'll be extremely difficult to recover just by absorbing the energy of the world. It'll be extremely disadvantageous if this goes on for a long time. We might not last much longer, said Changyang Mingyue. she spoke very sternly. Even with the support of a great group of sainthood experts and several origin realm experts, the Divine Hall was unable to keep Ouyang Yangwen and the others trapped for too long. After all, the Divine Hall's offensive capabilities were insignificant. Just defending would not work. At the same time, keeping Ouyang Yangwen and the others trapped and blocking any attacks from them would expend the energy of the Divine Hall. Once it used up all their energy, the Divine Hall would become useless. At that time, even if Ouyang Yangwen and the others were unable to smash through the Divine Hall, they could take it away. The Divine Hall, without any formations or energy, would just be a tough and heavy building. Saint Emperors might not be able to withstand its weight, but it weighed nothing to the origin realm experts. Everyone frowned due to what Changyang Mingyue had said. Their complexions all became horrible. Jianshan sank into his thoughts before a gleam of cold light flashed through his eyes. He said in a heavy voice, "This can't continue. You guys support the Divine Hall. I'll go heal. I'll leave the Saint artifact here. We can take turns entering the artifact space and having the artifact spirit heal you." Jianshan left behind the Saint artifact and left by himself. He found a quiet place to focus on healing. The fusion of the twin swords had failed, but Jianshan had still suffered a significant backlash. His injuries were severe since his body had almost collapsed. Even his soul was heavily injured. In a secret room within the Divine Hall, Jianshan used a precious droplet of sap from a stalk of amethyst spiritual bamboo. He placed the sap on his forehead, and as soon as it came in contact with his skin, it silently seeped in. It turned into a cool presence that nourished his soul, allowing it to recover rapidly. At the same time, Jianshan used the origin energy of a Class 9 Radiant Saint Master. Combined with his chaotic body, he healed as quickly as he could. The origin realm experts from the foreign world remained trapped in the azure streams while Jianshan healed. Even Ouyang Yangwen was stuck within them, but even though he was trapped, Ouyang Yangwen showed no signs of anxiety at all. Instead, he sneered, "I'd like to see how long you last. There's no origin energy in this world, so once you use up all the energy you have, it'll be very difficult to recover. Elder Ouyang, are we supposed to remain like this so that they continue to waste their energy?" A receival protector asked. Ouyang Yangwen glanced over and coldly replied, "Do you have any other ideas aside from wasting their energy now that the situation is like this? If we don't waste all the energy of the Divine Hall, we can't do anything to them. Even if I break free from these restraints by using my full power, there's nothing I can do to the Divine Hall." In the blink of an eye, a whole day passed while both sides remained locked in a stalemate. During that time, the foreign experts in the origin realm did not use much energy, but the Divine Hall continuously maintained the azure streams of light. They restrained the foreign experts and prevented them from attacking the Divine Hall and, thus, damaging the Tian Yuan continent from the shockwaves. As a result, their expenditure of energy was extremely severe. Many sainthood experts had used up all their saint force and were currently meditating to recover. However, their rate of recovery was nowhere near the rate of expenditure. As time passed, all the sainthood experts would begin to use up their saint force. The Divine Hall's power would weaken without their support. The current situation would become worse for the Tian Yuan continent the longer it lasted. However, a figure suddenly charged out of the Divine Hall at this very moment. He was clad in a special light, which radiated with extremely sharp strands of sword qi. 2 swords, one azure and one violet, hovered above his head, shining with their respective color. They were much duller than before and were riddled with cracks. As soon as Jianshan appeared, he shot toward the returnance expert closest to him in an aggressive manner. His presence soared, causing the wind and clouds to churn. The returnance expert was the elder Zhang, who had faced off Agent Houston earlier. As he watched Jianshan charge toward him, his face immediately changed. Without any hesitation, he erupted with all his strength at returnance. He pushed the azure streams of light around him 3 meters away. At the same time, a sword appeared in his hand, and he stabbed out with it. Elder Zhang knew Jian Chen's power, so he used his full strength from the first attack. He held nothing back. Jian Chen had fully recovered from his wounds, now back in peak condition. The azulate swords were damaged, but he still could defeat mid-returnance experts with his full strength. The elder before him was only at early returnance, so as soon as they began fighting, Jian Chen knocked Elder Zhang's sword out of his hand. At the same time, the Qing Suo sword shot forward with a flash of azure light and chopped off the elder's right hand. Elder Zhang grunted and attempted to flee. However, since he had just used his full strength, the azure streams were no longer kept away from his body due to the origin energy used in the attack. They immediately rebounded and trapped him once again. Oh no! Elder Zhang's heart immediately sank. However, the moment he thought that, he saw an azure flash. Without any hesitation, Elder Zhang abandoned his body and fled as quickly as he could in the form of a soul. He ran toward the tunnel in fright. Spurt! The Ziying sword pierced his head. Jian Chen slammed his hand into the hilt, causing Elder Zhang's head to rupture. The Ziying sword turned into a violet streak of light, pursuing Elder Zhang's fleeing soul with lightning-like speed. Elder Zhang's soul couldn't flee as quickly as the Ziying sword. Seeing how he was unable to escape, he immediately cried out, "Elder Ouyang, save!" However, before he could finish what he was saying, the Ziying sword caught up and wiped out his soul. Jian Chen did not pause after killing Elder Zhang. He immediately shot toward another returnance expert. Chapter 1551, Driven Back, 3. The other Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints watched Jian Chen slay Elder Zhang. They were shaken, causing the elders to reveal drastically different expressions and the protectors' hearts to churn, almost losing their composure. Some of them feared and dreaded Jian Chen. As a returnance expert, Elder Zhang had been felled by Jian Chen's sword in less than 3 moves. Although Elder Zhang had been restrained, 3 moves was enough to indicate just how powerful Jian Chen was. Jian Chen had only needed 3 moves to kill Elder Zhang, who possessed the power to free himself temporarily. If he attacked any receival experts, would they not have to watch their deaths approach them since they were completely immobilized? Even if they fled in the form of souls, it would be difficult for them to avoid death. What happened to Elder Zhang was the best evidence. More and more people among the receival protectors from the foreign world realized this, and they felt fear, because they were not like the returnance experts at all. The returnance experts could temporarily free themselves from their bonds by exposing their full strength. Jian Chen had already charged off toward a second Origin Realm expert from the world of Forsaken Saints. He targeted another elder, ignoring the receival experts for the moment. It would not be difficult for Shaoling, Tai Ta, Changyang Mingyue, or Houston to kill the receival experts. Only the returnance experts could threaten them. Now that all these returnance experts had been restrained, he needed to kill as many as possible. With every returnance expert the world of Forsaken Saints lost, the pressure the Tian Yuan continent faced would lessen. Jian Chen's second target was Qing Jingyun. She was a mid-returnance expert, but she had been heavily injured during her battle against Changyang Mingyue. She had not recovered yet, so her wounds remained, drastically impacting her strength. It would be relatively easier to kill her. Qing Jingyun's eyes suddenly narrowed as she became solemn. She knew just how strong Jian Chen was. Even Xiongzhong, who was at late returnance, had been defeated by him. Even if she was in peak condition, she was not the opponent of someone so powerful, let alone right now, heavily injured and trapped by the azure streams of light. Qing Jingyun could no longer bother with maintaining her wounds. She endured the outcome where her wounds would rapidly worsen as she erupted with her full strength. She pushed herself to her limits, forcing herself into a peak condition. She forced open the restraints. However, she paid a very heavy price. She vomited a few mouthfuls of blood and became even more pale. Her wounds rapidly worsened. She would not last very long at all. Qing Jingyun gritted her teeth as determination flashed through her eyes. In this moment of life and death, just for a tiny chance of survival, she abandoned everything to face her opponent in her strongest form, not caring about harming the essence of her life. She swung her whip. As it flew through the air, it continuously grew longer, wrapping around Jian Chen with an azure light. A dragon's roar seemed to erupt from the whip in the meantime. A cold light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. He swung the Ziying sword at the whip with a resplendent glow. The whip immediately exploded with azure light. The weapons produced sparks when they collided. The deafening roar of a dragon completely materialized at that moment along with a dragon's aura. At the same time, the moment the Ziying sword came in contact with the whip, it was wrapped up by the whip, which was several thousand meters long. It was like an agile viper that coiled around the Ziying sword. Jian Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed. He could not help but re-examine the whip. The whip was extraordinary. When his sword struck the whip, it felt like he had hit a dragon instead, producing sparks when they touched. The whip seemed to have been transformed from a dragon. Shortly after that, Jian Chen violently shook his hand and the Ziying sword immediately exploded with light and sword qi. It broke free from the whip's restraints in a single moment. Wielding the sword in his right hand, Jian Chen gently kicked off the whip with the tip of his toes and shot off toward Qing Jingyun like a loose arrow. Qing Jingyun's whip danced furiously in the air. The whip immediately turned and, at the end of it, the figure of an azure dragon appeared, preventing Jian Chen from getting any closer. A shield that was 3 meters long and formed from the coiled whip appeared before Qing Jingyun as well. Jian Chen guarded himself with his special glow while he shot toward Qing Jingyun as a streak of light. He used a single strike to disperse the dragon and moved through the air at an extreme speed. He approached Qing Jingyun's shield like he was unstoppable. The Ziying sword glowed brighter. The tip of the sword landed on the center of the shield and immediately produced a great boom. The shield collapsed and Qing Jingyun vomited blood. She was blown back, suffering a heavy blow. Heavy killing intent appeared in Jian Chen's eyes. He immediately pursued, having made up his mind to make Qing Jingyun fall under his sword. He did not go easy on her at all just because she was of the opposite sex. We need to assist Qing Jingyun. He may be strong, but killing him is only a matter of a few attacks if we work together, a returnant's elder reasoned out. Many people immediately erupted with their full strength, temporarily breaking free from their bonds. However, the streams of azure light expanded at that moment, erupting with an even greater force to keep the returnant's experts trapped. The returnant's experts were no longer able to break free in time to assist Qing Jingyun. At this moment, a great boom rang out. Ouyang Yangwen erupted with surging power and struck the azure streams of light with his full strength using his sword, immediately causing them to disintegrate. The azure streams of light were able to trap mid-returnant's experts, where they could not quickly break free even with their full strength, but it was rather difficult to keep Ouyang Yangwen trapped. After all, Ouyang Yangwen was just too powerful. His battle prowess was on par to those who had just broken through to reciprocity. He remained trapped out of his free will earlier in an attempt to exhaust the Divine Hall's power. After breaking free, Ouyang Yangwen charged toward Jian Chen without any hesitation at all. A blood-red world appeared behind him as a scarlet sun, as red as blood, sank below the western horizon. A crescent moon, also red like blood, slowly rose from the east, rising high up in the sky. It radiated a demonic light. First transformation of the blood sun and crescent moon, force of sunfall. Ouyang Yangwen cried out. The blood-red sun and the bloody world behind him seemed to fuse with his body. He used its power to produce a shocking sword qi. The sword qi was completely red, possessing the power of the blood-red sun. It shot toward Jian Chen with lightning-like speed and a demonic red glow. Chapter 1552, Driven Back, 4. Ouyang Yangwen used a secret technique this time. He wanted to kill Jian Chen as soon as possible. The Divine Hall caused him a headache that was painful enough. If Jian Chen also made trouble by killing all the Origin Realm experts trapped in the azure streams of light, their world would suffer significant losses. The world of Forsaken Saints could ignore the fates of Saint Emperors, but they needed to pay attention to the number of Origin Realm experts they possessed. Moreover, the azure streams of light moved just too quickly. Even Ouyang Yangwen was unable to dodge them. He would become trapped as long as they shot in his direction. Although he could break free from the restraints with his full strength, breaking free exacted an extremely heavy toll on his origin energy, especially if he had to do break free over and over again. There was no origin energy in this world either, so once he used all of his origin energy up, it would be extremely difficult for him to replenish it. This was also the reason why Ouyang Yangwen wanted to kill Jian Chen so urgently. The blood-red sword qi let out a dazzling red light. It tore through space as it moved toward Jian Chen with the power of the red sun. It produced a great disturbance, dyeing the entire sky blood-red. Ouyang Yangwen was much stronger than Jian Chen. Coupled with a secret technique, he could erupt with even greater power, so Jian Chen did not show any carelessness whatsoever. Jian Chen watched Qing Jingyun shoot off while feeling some regret. He was so close to killing a second elder of the world of Forsaken Saints, but he needed to give up now. Suddenly, the twin swords seemed to recover their past power. They erupted with bright azure and violet lights. A dazzling white light mixed with the two colors. The white light emanated a soaring sword intent. This was the power of laws controlled by Jian Chen, who was at the partial achievement of sword origin. Jian Chen could no longer worry about whether the twin swords would become more damaged or not. He used his full strength along with a sword technique. The two swords became 300 meters long as they shot toward the blood-red sword qi with lightning-like speed. The collision between the two attacks immediately produced a deafening rumble. The blood-red sword qi possessed extremely great power. It knocked the huge swords far away. The sword qi continued toward Jian Chen. It moved extremely quickly, arriving before Jian Chen in a single red flash. However, the sword qi's power had decreased after being obstructed by the twin swords, so it was no longer as powerful as before. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed. The sword qi had been drastically weakened, but he could still clearly sense that its power could not be underestimated. In that crucial moment, he backpedaled through the air and retreated, appearing several thousand meters away in the next instance. At the same time, he created a sword in his right hand. He used his powers at partial achievement sword origin, condensing the power of laws into a snow-white sword of light that was just as long as the twin swords. It let out a dazzling light. The sword he had condensed using his power of laws was not extremely powerful. In fact, much weaker than the twin swords due to his limited comprehension of the way of the sword, but the two swords had been knocked away from him and could not make it back to him in time. Condensing a sword was now the best method to block the remaining sword qi. Boom! The two strands of sword qi collided and immediately erupted in the air like resplendent fireworks. Countless strands of residual sword qi scattered through the sky like flowers, shooting off in all directions. Jian Chen's sword qi dispersed, but a finger-sized sword qi from Ouyang Yangwen remained. It shone with a demonic red light as it passed through Jian Chen's body. Jian Chen's body shuddered. The power of the blood-red sun made the sword qi extremely hot, so the region where he was injured rapidly melted away. It turned into a fist-sized hole in the blink of an eye, heavily damaging his organs. Jian Chen suppressed the wound with chaotic force and used radiant saint force to recover. First transformation of the blood sun and crescent moon, force of moonrise. Ouyang Yangwen cried out and continued to cast his secret technique. However, before he could cast the next part of the secret technique, with a flash of azure light, he was trapped by the streams of light once again. This time, the streams were even more powerful, pushing the origin energy that had enveloped Ouyang Yangwen back into his body in a single moment. At the same time, there was a flash of golden light from behind Ouyang Yangwen. Tai Ta had silently appeared behind him with his golden axe. Powerful battle intent conjured into a huge, illusory axe above his head. When it fused with the axe in his hand, it immediately erupted with an even more powerful presence. The axe was complete with both its form and soul. Tai Ta cleaved the air as it moved toward Ouyang Yangwen's head. Ouyang Yangwen's face suddenly changed. There had been no prior signs that Tai Ta would appear. He had sensed nothing at all earlier. If he had not been restrained, there was obviously no need for him to treat Tai Ta's attack with any importance, but now, he could feel a strong threat. Be careful, Elder Ouyang. The other elders of the world of Forsaken Saints also noticed Ouyang Yangwen's predicament, so their faces changed and they all called out. Ouyang Yangwen's eyes exploded with light as he immediately bellowed out loud. Surging origin energy leaked out of his body without any restraint, causing the surroundings to shake and space to collapse. Even though his restraints did not break under his full strength, he pushed them 3 inches away. However, the golden axe touched his scalp. Dealing with such a close situation, Ouyang Yangwen only managed to parry with his sword above his head. The golden axe crashed down with the force of 1,000 tons as it smashed into Ouyang Yangwen's sword. The terrifying power knocked Ouyang Yangwen out of the sky and into the ground. Jian Chen also hurried over with lightning-like speed as a blur. He caught up to Ouyang Yangwen in a single moment and stabbed out with the Ziying sword. Ouyang Yangwen swung his sword and blocked the Ziying sword, forcing Jian Chen back at the same time. However, the Qing Suo sword managed to pierce Ouyang Yangwen's abdomen, passing through his body as an azure flash. It also deposited a sliver of the power of laws in Ouyang Yangwen's body. Ouyang Yangwen paled and vomited blood. He lowered his head to look at his abdomen. Disbelief filled his face as he mumbled while at a loss, "I've actually been injured. Impossible, this is impossible. How could I be injured by them?" Ouyang Yangwen struggled to accept this fact. He was the greatest elder from the world of Forsaken Saints, a late returnance expert only second to the Spirit King. However, he had just been injured by someone whose true strength had not even reached the origin realm. This was a great blow to Ouyang Yangwen's confidence. Tai Ta, go kill the other origin realm experts. I'll keep him busy, Jian Chen said to Tai Ta. He then charged toward Ouyang Yangwen. The azure streams of light were unable to keep Ouyang Yangwen trapped. In order to prevent him from disturbing Tai Ta while he dealt with the other origin realm experts, Jian Chen could only keep Ouyang Yangwen busy. Without any hesitation, Tai Ta charged toward the other origin realm experts. He knew that he was still slightly weaker compared to Jian Chen and knew that would have to expend quite some effort in order to kill returnance experts. Since time was tight, he did not deal with the elders and charged toward the protectors instead. The protectors from the Sacred Spirit Hall remained restrained. When they saw Tai Ta fly toward them, they immediately revealed different expressions. Some of them opened their mouths and cried for help from the elders. 2 elders temporarily broke free from their restraints and worked together to fight Tai Ta. With Tai Ta's strength, it was a little difficult for him to face deal with 2 returnance experts at the same time. As a result, he was greatly suppressed as soon as they began fighting. At this moment, Changyang Mingyue peered outside the Divine Hall. She immediately said, "Let me deal with them." Tian Jian, who sat on the jade-white seat, suddenly opened his eyes. He said, "None of you can go out, or we might not be able to keep them restrained." With that, Changyang Mingyue paused. She hesitated before deciding to stay and provide energy to the Divine Hall to keep the other experts trapped. Tian Jian gazed at the people around him and said, "I need everyone's full support so that the Divine Hall can display even greater might to keep the returnance experts trapped and giving Tai Ta time to kill the receival experts." With the death of every origin realm expert from the world of Forsaken Saints, there will be less pressure on the Divine Hall to keep the others trapped. The few origin realm experts in the Supreme Divine Hall did not hesitate at all. They immediately placed their hands on the jade-white seat. Their power surged out, making the Divine Hall even more powerful. The 2 returnance experts fighting Tai Ta were trapped very soon. Without them, Tai Ta immediately charged toward the receival experts. "Elder, let's work together and kill him," suggested a returnance expert. The restraints of the azure streams are even more powerful. We can temporarily break free with our strength, but we'll greatly exhaust our origin energy, and even if we do break free, we can only dish out a few attacks before we're trapped again. It'll be difficult to kill him with just those attacks, another elder replied with a heavy heart. Qing Jingyun coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood. She looked around and weakly said, "Elders, I'm heavily injured. I won't be of any help if I stay any longer, so I'll be leaving first." With that, Qing Jingyun used a secret technique, burning her essence blood in exchange for great power to break free from the restraints. She did not look back at all as she entered the tunnel, fleeing back to the world of forsaken saints. Qing Jingyun's departure was not met with any obstructions at all. However, now that she was gone, the azure stream of light that had been trapping her split into 6 and spread among the 6 other returnance elders. Their facial expressions immediately changed. At this moment, there was a miserable cry. A receival expert had died in Tai Ta's hands. His souls had been wiped out. However, the death of the receival expert made all the faces of the returnance experts sink. The stream of light that had been trapping him was now divided into 6, which then extended to them. This can't continue. If it does, we'll probably be dead before we can even waste away the energy of the divine hall, an elder said with a heavy voice. Chapter 1553, Driven Back, 5. Ouyang Yangwen's face became extremely sunken when he heard what was said. They could have easily run amok in this world, but the appearance of the divine hall had turned the situation around. They, who originally possessed the upper hand, had entered an awkward position. All the saint emperors and receival experts had been trapped by the azure streams of light, and they could not break free at all. Moreover, the returnance experts suffered from the azure streams of light as well. Now that a receival expert had fallen and Qing Jingyun had left, the restraints on the 6 of them had become even more powerful. Ouyang Yangwen had originally wanted to waste all the energy in the Supreme Divine Hall. Once the Divine Hall exhausted all its power, the people hiding inside would all become sitting ducks. They would not be able to flee even if they wanted to. At that time, not only would they be able to kill off all the Origin Realm experts, but the Divine Hall would belong to them as well. However, Ouyang Yangwen had never thought that the situation would be reversed. Not only did they fail to waste all the Divine Hall's energy like he had imagined, but they were also forced to deal with the problems thrown at them. Even Ouyang Yangwen, who was extremely confident in himself, felt slightly pressured because he was no longer able to break through the azure streams of light now that they had strengthened. He could only loosen them by using origin energy. Not only did he need to devote a portion of his strength to keep the streams at bay, but he also needed to suppress the wound in his abdomen and prevent the power of laws from spreading. Ouyang Yangwen still barely managed to gain the upper hand while dealing with Jian Chen's swift attacks. He could no longer use pure strength to suppress Jian Chen. He was powerless to stop Tai Ta. At this moment, another miserable cry rang out. A second receival expert from the world of Forsaken Saints had died to Tai Ta's hands. His head had been smashed by a single strike from Tai Ta's axe, dispersing his soul in the process. As soon as the protector passed away, the elders immediately felt the azure streams around them strengthen once again. Their faces dramatically changed, and even Ouyang Yangwen struggled to remain composed. If all the protectors were killed by Tai Ta, the azure streams would probably become so powerful that even the elders would no longer be able to break free. They would no longer be around to shoulder the load from the Divine Hall. At that time, only death would await them. Moreover, their world could not endure the loss of so many Origin Realm experts. Elder Ouyang, the situation is becoming worse for us. Let's retreat for now, an elder said with a heavy heart. He glanced at the tunnel below from time to time. He had clearly already made up his mind. If Ouyang Yangwen insisted on staying, he would flee even if he had to offend Ouyang Yangwen. Ouyang Yangwen clearly understood the situation at hand as well. A sliver of disgrace flashed through his eyes as he gritted his teeth, all retreat. Without any hesitation, the other elders immediately broke free from their restraints. However, they did not immediately enter the tunnel. Instead, they all arrived before the trapped protectors and freed them from their restraints. The streams of azure light that trapped the receival experts were much weaker than the ones that trapped the returnance experts. They collapsed after a single attack from the returnance experts. With their assistance, all the trapped protectors broke free in just a short while. At the same time, Ouyang Yangwen furiously bellowed out. He forced Jian Chen back with a full power attack. The sword in his hand danced about furiously. He sent a wave of sword chi toward the trapped Saint Emperors before retreating back into the tunnel with them. They all returned to their own world in horrible shape. The Supreme Divine Hall did not take advantage of the situation and attack them. It allowed them to escape. The azure streams of light could have trapped them again, forcing them to lose at least half of their experts, or even all of them, but all the Origin Realm experts in the Divine Hall would have exhausted all their Origin energy in exchange. In fact, they might not have had enough Origin energy to kill all the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. They were in a world that lacked Origin energy. It was difficult to completely recover all their spent Origin energy within several decades or a century once they expended it all. Without their support, the Divine Hall's power significantly weakened. Once the next wave of experts from the foreign world came, they would not be able to fend them off. The Divine Hall rapidly descended from the sky after the foreign experts retreated. It guarded the entrance of the tunnel by blocking it. The intense battle between the two worlds had finally come to a close. All the survivors from the four races let out breaths of relief. Many of them were joyful that they won. Many of the sainthood experts in the Divine Hall had channeled all their saint force into the Divine Hall so that it could become more powerful. Thus, they were utterly exhausted. The moment the battle ended, many of them collapsed where they were. They had used up all their power, and some of them had even used secret techniques to burn their essence blood, becoming haggard and extremely weak. Tianjian, who was controlling the Divine Hall through the Jade White Seat, and the Origin Realm experts around him all let out a breath of relief as well. A smear of paleness had appeared on Tianjian's face. He was not the only who paled. Even the Origin Realm experts around him also paled. The Divine Hall consumed energy far too rapidly. Even though only a short amount of time had passed, they had exhausted close to half of their Origin energy. If the foreign experts had not retreated, they probably would not have lasted much longer. I never thought that the world of Forsaken Saints would attack so soon. It's fortunate that I managed to refine the Supreme Divine Hall from the City Lord in time, or the outcome would have been unthinkable, Tianjian said, rejoicing. If he had come with the Divine Hall just a little later, the current situation would be completely different. I never thought that this Divine Hall would be so powerful, where even late returnance experts can't even shake it. Mo Tianyun truly is worthy of the title of the greatest human expert. His true strength probably surpassed returnance long ago. Shangguan Mu'er sighed in surprise as she observed the Divine Hall. The power of my master is beyond your imaginations. So what about returnance experts? My master could kill them easily with a single finger. When that war god of the 100 races attacked our Tianyuan continent back then, he was far stronger than this Ouyang Yangwen, yet he was still easily repelled by master. If it weren't for the fact that my master didn't want to kill the war god, how could he have escaped from master's hands? Xiao Ling pridefully. Chapter 1554, Future Survival. Everyone was amazed by what Xiao Ling had said. In reality, no one truly knew the strength of the champions of the four races from the ancient times because the cultivation realms beyond Saint Emperor had never been passed down. Any person who had reached Origin Realm, whether it be receival, returnance, or reciprocity, were all known as those who had surpassed Saint Emperor. After all, there had only been 4 experts like that in the entire world. Until now, only the sea goddess' exact strength had been disclosed among the 4 champions. Everyone was still not exactly clear as to what Mo Tianyun, Ergens, and the winged tiger god's true strength had been. They could only deduce a simple estimate from the minimal amount of information they learned from Shaolin. However, their estimates still caused them to sigh in amazement. Everyone, the experts from the foreign world have retreated, but the tunnel still has not completely closed. They can attack our continent at any time, so it's best if you don't leave the Divine Hall. Make sure you are ready at all times to channel energy into the structure. We can only guard this place by using the Divine Hall as much as possible so that we can prevent the foreign experts from entering our world, Tianjian said to the people around him. He slowly glanced over the Origin Realm experts around him with his resolute gaze, but his heart could not help but surge with tremendous waves. Shangguan Mu'er, Changyang Mingyue, the Winged Tiger God, and Tai Ta had all been his juniors in the past and much weaker than him. He had even assisted them and granted them protection. Yet, now that he had emerged from seclusion, it was as if countless years had passed in the outside world. All the people who had once been his juniors, in fact, the people he had once protected, had all reached the Origin Realm. Houston used to be a Saint King at great perfection with him, an expert who stood at the apex of the Tian Yuan continent together with him. Yet now, Houston, who was roughly the same age as him, had already reached the Origin Realm, which amazed Tianjian. The Supreme Divine Hall blocked the entrance to the tunnel, but just Tianjian and the Divine Hall would not be enough to guard the entrance. The people from the foreign world might not be able to smash through the structure, but they possessed the power to push it away. As a result, the Divine Hall required the support of all the Origin Realm experts and Sainthood experts so that its formations could remain in operation. Only with everyone participating could they fend off the foreign experts. There was no need for Tianjian to explain any of this. They all already knew why, so they did not object Tianjian's suggestion. They all agreed to stay behind and guard the Divine Hall. There's an even more powerful Spirit King in the world of Forsaken Saints. The reason why he hasn't come this time is because the tunnel is unable to endure his power. Once it stabilizes enough, the Spirit King will pass through and attack the Divine Hall, and the world of Forsaken Saints has origin energy, so even if the Spirit King uses up all his energy, he can recover in an extremely short amount of time. On the other hand, it is extremely difficult for us to recover. As a result, we need to save our origin energy as well as use all the resources we have, including all monster cores, regardless of class, any remains of Sainthood experts, and the special crystal coins from the sea race. We need to use everything that can offer us energy. Only with every resource available will we be able to last longer. We can think of a way to completely remove the foreign threat after that, said Houston. He was extremely stern. He had mostly recovered from his wounds in the artifact space and had changed into a new set of robes. It said that the Spirit King's strength is on par with experts at godhood. Even if we have several hundred years to gather strength, it'll be very difficult for us to fend off such a great force, and if they continuously waste the power of the Divine Hall, we will only last a few decades with all the power from the four races or a few years. How should we deal with this Spirit King? In ancient times, Mo Tianyun entered the world of Forsaken Saints and conducted a massacre, killing many Origin Realm experts from the foreign world, so they suffered an extremely great loss. In the end, he sealed up the tunnel between the two worlds, so we've fallen out with them long ago. Coupled with the battles that have happened this time, we're like ice and fire now. If we fail to guard this place, our world will be massacred. We might even be destroyed altogether. Everyone became heavy-hearted. Their joy from just repelling the invasion instantly vanished. They all understood that the Tian Yuan continent could guard the entrance with the Divine Hall, but they would probably last a few decades at most. A few decades was not enough time for them to catch a breath. How were they going to survive in the future? In the years that we have left, we need to raise an expert who is powerful enough to stand his ground against the Spirit King, Tianjian said with a heavy voice as he slowly glanced over everyone. Everyone felt a heavy pressure descend. The reason why their strength had rapidly increased was due to the fact that they had obtained some legacy or that they possessed some heaven-defying heavenly resource. However, Houston and the White Tiger had already exhausted their legacies. It was impossible for their strength to jump a second time. Changyang Mingyue had only reached returnance in such a short amount of time due to the 10,000-year ice souls. However, there had only been 3 ice souls, and each one had taken 3 million years to condense. It was impossible for a 4th one to form. As for Shangguan Mu'er, she had been blessed by the world since she was the mother of a child who possessed the innate chaotic body. Her strength increased extremely rapidly, but it was impossible for her to become powerful enough to stand up to the Spirit King in such a short amount of time because she advanced slower the higher her cultivation became. My strength will not increase in a short amount of time. There's just not that many resources to support my cultivation, but there is the previous war god's corpse that has been sealed on the wasteland continent. The seal only requires the last beast fur stored within the Supreme Divine Hall for it to open. Senior Tian Jian, give the beast fur to Tai Ta so that he can open the seal. He might be able to benefit from it, Jian Chen's voice rang out. He walked in side by side with Tai Ta. His robes were splattered with blood. I'll go get it right now. Tian Jian's eyes lit up, and without any hesitation, he immediately went to retrieve the last beast fur. Tian Jian left to go to the treasury. However, the Origin Realm experts all remained where they were. They did not go with him. Uncle Xiao, you've finally emerged from seclusion. I scoured the entire world in search of you. Jian Chen bitterly smiled as he looked at Houston. Houston gently sighed. Throughout all these years, I've been cultivating in the depths of the death nest in a selfless and mindless state. I had no sense of time at all. My strength has increased drastically, but it's a pity that I failed to see my son one last time. Houston's face was filled with regret and sorrow. His eyes seemed slightly empty as well. When he had emerged from the death nest, he had expanded his soul to Longevity Valley. He saw Xiao Mi's grave. Just how many people in the world had to bear the pain of watching their son pass away? Chapter 1555, The White Tiger's Human Form. Although Houston had known long ago that his son's death would come someday and could not be changed, he still felt utterly horrible even though he had mentally prepared himself. Jian Chen sighed inside as well. Houston had not been present when Uncle Xiao Mi had passed away. He was unable to personally see his son off. Houston was not the only one filled with regret. Even Jian Chen and all the villagers in Longevity Valley were filled with regret. Jian Chen had no idea how to comfort Houston as he studied Houston's expression. He understood Houston's feelings since he was a father as well. Jian Chen glanced at the white tiger. The white tiger was only a meter long. Its snow-white fur had been dyed red with blood and carried the strong smell of blood. In the earlier battle, the white tiger had suffered heavy wounds as well. Although it had already healed, it had not cleaned the dry blood from his fur. Jian Chen became filled with joy when he sensed the white tiger's current strength. He felt happiness from the bottom of his heart. He had an extremely special connection with the white tiger. Jian Chen himself was unclear of his feelings for the white tiger. Back then, when the white tiger had just been born, it was by Jian Chen's side before it could even open its eyes. It had basically spent every year of its life by Jian Chen, aside from the days it spent in the Beast God Hall. Jian Chen had watched the white tiger grow from being a cub that could not even open its eyes to its current state. They were like companions yet also like father and son. Xiao Bai, I never thought that you'd obtain such a great fortune from the Beast God Hall, reaching the Origin Realm even when this world is sealed and comprehending laws as well. Your mother must be extremely happy, Jian Chen said to the white tiger. He then paused before asking with some doubt, you've reached the Origin Realm now. Are you still unable to assume a human form? Is the winged tiger god never able to assume a human form? Hesitation appeared in the white tiger's eyes. However, the hesitation soon disappeared, replaced by determination. Its body transformed, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a young boy. He seemed extremely valiant. His skin was very soft, just like a newly born infant. His hair was snow-white and at least a foot long, casually draped on his shoulders. His hair also possessed a mysterious luster, as if each strand was filled with power. His face, which was still rather young, possessed a sliver of resolution that did not match his age at all. It made him seem like a general who had experienced many wars. Tai Ta, Changyang Mingyue, Shangguan Mu'er, Shaoling, and Houston all became fixated on the white tiger. They had heard from the ancient rumors that the winged tiger god had always appeared in beast form and had never appeared in human form, so everyone in the world believed that the winged tiger god's bloodline was special and that it could not assume a human form even upon reaching the origin realm. However, the rumor had just been disproven before their eyes. Shaoling arrived before the white tiger and moved around him. Her bright eyes were filled with doubt as she murmured, "Strange, why do I feel a familiar presence on you?" Shaoling furrowed her brows, but she was unable to understand why. "The true name of my species is not the winged tiger god but the sacred feathered tiger emperors. We possess one of the strongest bloodlines in the world, comparable to ancestral dragons. The seal here is very powerful, but it's unable to seal up our bloodline. We're only able to assume a human form once we reach the origin realm because of our unique bloodline," said the white tiger. His voice sounded rather raw, probably due to the fact that this was his first time speaking. He was unable to utter his words very clearly. Everyone there, including Jian Chen, had no idea what an ancestral dragon was. Even Xiao Bai had no idea what an ancestral dragon was, so none of them paid much attention to it. However, the weakened sword spirits were extremely shocked and they heard about the ancestral dragons. Their hearts began to churn. What kind of legacy did he receive? How can he know about ancestral dragons? And what kind of heaven-defying species are the sacred feather tiger emperors? Why have we never heard of them? How can they possess such a powerful bloodline that is comparable to ancestral dragons? Even the sacred beast kings among the 4 sacred beasts in our immortals world do not possess such a great bloodline. Is he exaggerating? He must have learned all this from the previous winged tiger god through the legacy. What are the origins of that ancient winged tiger god? He actually knows about ancestral dragons, yet ancestral dragons disappeared several billion years ago from our immortals world. No ordinary person can learn about them, but anyone who does know about them is definitely be an apex expert who has survived countless years or someone important with a great background. At that moment, the sword spirits truly began to treat the white tiger with importance. They had never heard of the sacred feather tiger emperors, but since they comparable to ancestral dragons, they were definitely extraordinary beings. At this moment, Tianjian returned. He made his way over from the distance, and in his hand was an impressive, snow-white beast fur. The white tiger saw the beast fur as soon as it appeared. He felt extremely close to the beast fur since it was fur that had been shed by the sacred feathered tiger emperor from the ancient times. They were of the same species and the legacy he had just obtained came from the same sacred feathered tiger emperor. Tianjian passed the last beast fur to Tai Ta. Tai Ta held the beast fur and was filled with various emotions. The previous war god, Ergens, had been sealed up after being slain by the winged tiger god. His remains had been locked up for over 1,000,000 years. He had finally gathered the 18 beast furs and now possessed the key to removing the seal. He could let Ergens' remains return to the earth. The moment Tai Ta obtained the beast fur, he did not think about the fortune or legacy he would end up obtaining. He only thought about planning the grand burial for Ergens' remains. "Aside from the beast fur, I've found a few items that will be useful to us in the treasury," said Tianjian. With a wave of his hand, various jade boxes flew from his space ring. There were over 1,000 of them. A few people opened a few boxes out of curiosity. The items inside ranged from high-class monster cores to various pills. There were many Class 9 monster cores while the rest were Class 8 monster cores. These items should have all been left behind by the former masters of this divine hall. Due to the seals on the boxes, all the items have been preserved perfectly. "I don't know how long they've been the treasury, but they're still effective today," said Tianjian. "You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.